Welcome to Wednesday, the 26th of November's Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Thank you for braving through the ice and the frost to get here, but you can always tell when it's a cold day because we have a better attendance. So I think people like coming into the warm building. But it might be a coincidence. But yeah, thank you for turning up today. Obviously, this is a meeting in public, not a public meeting, and it'll be up to me in consultation with officers on table who we invite to speak, apart from the committee members, of course. Item 1, Howard, please. Apologies.
Yes, good morning, Andy. Good morning, Chair. Sorry, we have apologies from Councillor Hedges-Serafin and Councillor Ballinger as substitute for him.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Councillor Ballinger. Good to see you. And hope the cough's okay with your water. So, and if you do have to go out, just put your hand up and walk out. Oh, we're not precious, so we're happy for you to do that. So, right. Disclosure of interest. Item number 2. Any disclosures of interest apart from those eating the mince pies? Councillor Keithley, good to see you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I'm sorry I can't stay for the full meeting because I've got a meeting with my mother's care situation, so I'll be leaving about 1:45.
Yeah, no problem. You just indicate and go out. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, fully understand, and yeah, thank you for turning up today. I think we've got some optimism from that side of the room whether we'll be finished by 1:45, but I'll be happy to be proved wrong, especially if there's a mince pie in it as well for. So item number 3, minutes of the previous meetings. We've got 3 minutes where we need to confirm the ones on the 1st of October, 30th of October and the 5th of November. Any comments of members are happy with the content of those? Councillor Ballinger, please.
Just to say that I wasn't at the 1st or the 30th, but I did attend the 5th, so I can't comment on the other 2 meetings.
Yeah, you can still comment, even if, because you're a member of this committee today, you are still able to vote on the minutes and potentially comment as well. But we take your point and the point is noted, so thank you for that. Any other comments, or can I take those as confirmation you are happy for me to sign? So, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Item number 4, Chairman's brief. Yeah, we've got a few things today. There will be a Safe Warwickshire Local Plan meeting of the OSC on the 15th of December. The 7th of January meeting of OSC has been moved to the 14th of January, and that relates to getting the budget figures, I believe, because the Cabinet meeting has been put back. So I think it's due to the lateness of the budget figures. Am I right, Mr. Perks?
Yes, we're not expecting the sort of financial settlement from the government till the week before Christmas, which could be any of that days between the Monday and the Friday. We need to sort of make sure we accurately appraise that to make sure the budget is correct, and because of the time pressure, we think it would be better to push things back a week. It shouldn't affect, we've sort of modelled it all out, it shouldn't affect the other meetings of the OSC task and finish groups or the consultations. We can start that on the draft figures, and we think it'll give you a more accurate budget if we could have that extra week.
Councillor Rice first, then Councillor Rolfe, please.
May I just ask, hasn't that been the case, excuse me, Mr. Perks, hasn't that been the case in previous years that we've had the government's announcement just before Christmas?
Yes, it has. It's influenced by which day Christmas falls, so that sort of tightens the window as the year moves back. And there is precedent for this happening before, where we've had Christmas on sort of in the latter part of the week. We have, in previous years, moved the budget debate back a week to accommodate this. We were hopeful to receive the settlement rather earlier, but you are right, it has happened in the past. The government did push it back till practically Christmas Eve.
Councillor Rolfe, please.
Yeah, I will have to send my apologies for the 14th as I have a prior engagement, but I will look for a substitute. Thank you.
Councillor Littlewood.
I need to give my apologies for the 15th of December. I'm already committed all day on that day. I'll look for a substitute.
Brilliant, thank you for that. I've got a dentist appointment in the afternoon, so whether the meeting goes on a bit longer so I don't have to go to the dentist appointment, that might be a blessing. Councillor Alcott, please.
Thank you. I'll also need to give apologies for the 15th of December due to being at a training workshop.
Brent, are you likely to...
I will find a substitute.
Substitute. Brilliant,
Yes.
that's brilliant. Councillor Wiley-Huggins, please. Oh, sorry, I must have missed you.
I'm quite sure I've got nothing better to do than to come to those meetings on those days, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Third item on the Chair's brief is annual work programme items. Please could you give them to Mr Allison by the 12th of December? That would be good. We've got a members' briefing on housing on the 10th of December, and on the 13th of January, hot off the press, there is some finance scrutiny training. So just the next month or two, there's quite a few items that are pertinent to oversee. So whilst I can appreciate diaries do get filled up quite quickly, if you can attend these, that would be helpful. But again, I'm pragmatic enough to realise that people can't necessarily do 100% attendance at these. So, but if we can get as many people to these events, that would be good. Thank you. Brent, thank you very much. Next item is public participation. Howard, any no, none received today. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 6, which is the Community Safety Partnership and Serious Violence update. And we've got Sam, portfolio holder, and Mr. Sunlensek. Thank you for turning up, and we're in your hands. So yeah, obviously talking about the council's serious violence duties, and obviously the South Warwickshire Community Safety Partnership, which happened to be a meeting yesterday. Thank you.
Morning. I was just going to give a brief overview of the paper in front of you, and then Sam will want to speak, I think. So, South Warwickshire Community Safety Partnership, we have a legal duty to undertake scrutiny of crime and disorder every 12 months, so that's why we're here. And we're Stratford-on-Avon District Council is part of the South Warwickshire Community Safety Partnership with Warwick District Council, which is a responsible body under the Crime Disorder Act, and our responsibilities are to reduce crime, disorder, substance misuse and reoffending. The other responsible authorities in the Community Safety Partnership are the County Council, Warwickshire Police, Fire and Rescue, Probation, the ICB and the OPCC also attends meetings. You see the meeting schedule set out in the report. As Councillor Crump said, we met yesterday and we're considering the new partnership plan and other items. We've also had meetings that are confidential for domestic abuse reviews, and they are when somebody has died as a result of domestic abuse, and authorities look at what happened to see if there are any learning points, to see if that person could have been better protected. We set the new priorities for the Community Safety Partnership in February, and that was following a strategic assessment, and we now have a draft partnership plan which will replace this one in due course. Serious violence duty came into force at the end of January 2023, and you'll remember the head of community safety from county came here with head of community safety for Stratford to talk about the prevention strategy, and there were 3 points in that report talking about raw domestic violence in Stratford-on-Avon perhaps being underreported, children accessing alternate provision for education, and the Stratford Mount Pleasant East being a high risk score for serious violence, which Sam can update you all on.
Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Gist. Good morning, committee members. Good morning, Chair. Just by way of introduction, I'm Sam Slamentek, so I'm the Community Safety Manager here at Stratford District Council. Councillor Gist has already highlighted the main points of the paper, which is obviously looking at the performance review of the Community Safety Partnership for this year. A couple of just additional points just to add on to that. As has already been stated, there was a Community Safety Partnership Board yesterday which took place, which was looking at our new priorities, looking at a draft Community Safety Partnership Plan, which effectively details all of the approaches, all of the strategies and action plans in relation to the new priorities. So that was looked at and agreed. Subsequently, all of the strategies as well and plans in relation to each priority were also examined as a part of that. I suppose as a part of our updates today, we've just got to be really cognizant that the nature of some of these discussions might be particularly sensitive in terms of some of the initiatives or projects, but clearly we'll try and provide as much information as we can on those. It's also worth saying at the moment that the Community Safety Partnership is supported by Warwickshire County Council's Insight Service. They provide a lot of the analysis and data sets for the CSP partners. One of the things that they're currently looking at is how best to support public committees across Warwickshire and other forums in terms of providing data sets as well. So that's an ongoing piece of work where they're looking at what can obviously be shared through that. So actually, hopefully in due course, with future committees that we have as well, there'll be perhaps more data and analysis that we can bring to those. I just wanted to also just finalise that I believe last time you had a presentation from the Domestic Abuse Commissioner at Warwickshire County Council and the portfolio holder there. There was a couple of actions arising from that. One of those was for domestic abuse posters to be left, and I believe I've just left them at the back there with Mr. Allison. Happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Sam. Councillor Rolfe, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, on page 29, 1.7.1, it says here that the South Warwickshire Community Safety Partnership Plan has been in draft for a number of years, as there is a legal requirement for a CSP to have a partnership plan. The draft has been revised in order that it can be published. And at the bottom of that paragraph, the partnership plan is now fully published and accessible. Two questions, really. How long was it in draft for, and why was it in draft? And secondly, it's up to 2025, so when does the new plan start? And how long is that going to be in draft for?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. In terms of the draft plan that ran from 21 to 2025, I believe that came to various committees of this council back in the start of 2024. So that's when that plan was approved, the partnership plan running till the end of 2025. In terms of this particular partnership plan, which runs from 25 through to 29, we've got obviously a new version of that which went to the board yesterday. There will be some public consultation, partner consultation on that, and that will hopefully be published and approved at the board meeting in February 2026.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston, please.
A couple of comments, really. Looking on page 27, 28, and the serious crimes, I'm just wondering whether highway crime is included in this, given the potential for injury and fatality. Had a particular local issue in Wellesbourne in the last couple of years. It isn't included there. My other question is, are health involved in the alcohol and drugs action work? And should we be pursuing that?
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, I don't know if it was just my hearing, but with the first question, what was the bit around violent crime that you specifically said wasn't...
It was about highway crime,
right.
Given it isn't mentioned in the list.
that it must be a source of
Do you mean
injury
like
and
road safety? Is that what you're talking about? Or?
it's. I think there are criminal actions taking place on the roads that do lead or can lead to fatality and serious injury, and it just doesn't seem to be covered. Death by dangerous driving, that kind of thing.
I was going to say, we were just talking, Warwickshire Road Safety Partnership looks at, takes particular interest in this sort of crime. I don't know if you know the Police and Crime Commissioner has particular interest. He lost his niece in a road accident, so he's particularly interested in that. So that, under sort of his wing, takes particular focus on that sort of crime, and I can email you the details.
Just to add to that point, as Councillor Gist has outlined, as a part of our strategic assessment process, so the way in which we form the priorities, we have something called a strategic assessment, which is the evidence base of the issues that are taking place locally. Then the priorities are effectively set from there. As a part of that strategic assessment, it does include analysis of crime, road safety related incidents, obviously pertaining to the highway. So that is a part of the assessment. But actually, when we then consider the priorities, we have to look at what is best suited within the legislative framework for the partnership, but also what other existing partnerships exist. As Councillor Gist has highlighted, there is a specific road safety partnership. So actually, actions and plans pertaining to those issues which are highlighted in the strategic assessment are for the road safety partnership to take on, which is why there isn't any road safety particular priorities contained within this particular plan, because that's housed there. In relation to your second point around the involvement of health, so health partners are a responsible authority within the Community Safety Partnership. So they're represented on both the board and the operational group. And there is specific plans, and there's actually a statutory requirement under the Crime and Disorder Act and subsequent regulations that actually there has to be a strategy or an action plan. So even if we're trying to decide the other priorities, actually under legislation, there has to be a plan that involves health around drugs and alcohol. And there is a drugs and alcohol strategic partnership specifically which does that work within Warwickshire, and a specific action plan which we get updates on for the Community Safety Partnership board meetings.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think yeah, we just have to be careful that I can understand your point about causing death and serious injuries by dangerous driving or any form of behaviour, and I think Mr. Szymanczyk is right. It does fall under the Warwickshire Road Safety Partnership, but I think we can, as part of our role as councillors, get the message out that is totally unacceptable, and we are, we support the officers in their actions to doing it. So whilst we haven't probably got a formal role in doing this, we can do it in a formal way and get the message out that yes, it really impacts on people's lives, family, friends, etc. So I think it's probably more of an informal duty that we've got rather than a formal one. I think is that probably fair, Sam?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And yeah, we would really encourage that actually all partners, including District Council and local authorities, have a role to play. And like you said, actually, the reporting of incidents, the highlighting of key campaigns, messages is really critical to enhancing road safety.
Yeah, I've got Councillor Littlewood next, Councillor Ballinger, Councillor Wally-Hoggins, then Councillor Roth.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, rural crime. I mean, a significant proportion of crime reported is rural crime, something to do with geography probably, as it notes in the report. I'm looking at page 57 first, where we're talking about a coordinated response to incidents of rural crime, carry out proactive operations. What sort of examples have we got on that? Just so that we understand what that really means in reality.
Sorry, Councillor, I was just turning to the page there just so I could make reference to my answer. As you suggest, South Warwickshire is a particularly rural area, and therefore there is a disproportionate number of offences that might be considered crime happening in rural areas. As a result of that, as a part of the strategic assessment that took place in the previous years back to 2021, it was deemed that actually we would have a specific priority around this. So there is a specific action plan which effectively looks at kind of the prevent, prepare, protect, pursue elements of rural crime. And that's split down into some of the thematic areas that you can see under that action there of 10.3. There. So things like theft from motor vehicle, specific issues affecting farms and rural businesses, actually the role of antisocial behaviour in rural areas, which can obviously be slightly different sometimes than other settlements, but also really specific things like sheep worrying, fly tipping. So all of those areas, there are very specific operations and plans around which, just to give you like a very nuanced example there, if we just take livestock worrying and sheep worrying, there's a specific operation which you might have seen because we published around it a partnership operation whereby the rural crime advisors who are part of Stratford District Council will go out to key hotspot areas which have been identified through data analysis and previous reports of previous attacks on livestock and livestock worrying, where actually they'll have engagement events, they'll engage with dog walkers, they'll engage with people who are walking those public highways or public lands, giving out information leaflets, putting up signs about controlling dogs. We're obviously really aware of, a lot of individuals who might own dogs will be walking those same routes. So actually we're trying to target and provide those key messages to individuals who are going to be there on a daily basis. But then similarly, from a policing perspective, they'll be engaging with those individuals. They'll be engaging with nearby farms and businesses just to see if anything can kind of be target hardened around there, as well as then actually proactively prosecuting offences. And there are a number of offences from the past year where there's either been community resolutions or prosecutions where those have taken place, and once again publication around that. So, and I forget the specific name of the operation, but I can provide that at the end as reference. But for each of those areas, there are quite specific proactive operations that are formed within this Rural Crime Action Plan. As a part of the new priorities that we also have, which is contained within the report, acquisitive crime within rural areas is once again a priority, so that action plan continues to take place and has just been reviewed at our Community Safety Board meeting yesterday.
Thank you. Could I just have a follow-up on that, please? Page 66, which is the 24-25 report. And just following on from what we've just been talking about, and thank you for that very informative response, rural crime prevention, visits and equipment. Now, in that paragraph there, it states this project sought to extend the scope of supported villages to include crime prevention, etc., 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 and talking particularly about domestic dwellings. Could you just expand on what the supported villages are and how they're supported, and what that initiative really was about, please?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So in terms of supported villages, that's a particular term that relates to a project around we will go and identify certain villages or certain villages that want to engage with us, community champions, councillors, other individuals who we will basically provide crime prevention equipment or materials. We will run a specific event, or we will go to established events such as kind of coffee mornings or kind of various exercise classes where actually you've got a large number of individuals from a particular village visiting. And what we'll do is we'll provide them effectively a box or a number of boxes of crime prevention equipment, which might contain sort of smart mortar or kind of other sort of marking devices, things that such as like TV simulators, light kind of switch things, and a number of other kind of crime prevention materials. I think in total there's about 20 different things that we provide within that box. And the idea being is that we're equipping residents from that village, those crime prevention materials, things that will either deter individuals from targeting their premises or their dwellings, or will just kind of encourage or provide evidence gathering should any incidents take place. But the idea being is that we want to empower those community groups and those individuals there to obviously have those things. That group, and we'll always find an established owner, a group or person that will obviously provide those materials on an ongoing basis. It's not that we give them all out at the same time. It's something that will sustain that particular community over a year or two's period of time. But once again, we will then work with the established champions as a part of that scheme should any incidents take place, or to just learn about any trends or concerns there so we can continue to support them.
Thank you, Chair.
Brilliant, thanks for that. I'm just going back to the dog walkers. Obviously, we have to be careful not to alienate them because they're a really good source of community intelligence. And if I remember rightly, a dog walker and his dog called Pickles once found the World Cup that went missing in 1966. So yeah, they are. It's amazing. So I think you're right that you talk about obviously the responsibilities of being a dog owner, but also they get to places and see things that are a good source of community intelligence as well. So thank you for that. Councillor Ballinger, please follow that with the World Cup analogy.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be doing that, unfortunately, because we talked about violence against women and girls, and also specifically, I guess it's violence against all people. But talking mostly about stalking, because we've just had quite a big case recently, which is in the public domain, and according to the ONS figures, recent ONS figures, it's been an increase of stalking of 129, just over 129,000 cases since 2024. So I just want to know if we can put something in there specifically about stalking, and what support we can give people who have been stalked.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. And it's a good observation in terms of particularly at a national level and regional level about those particular trends and stalking, like you said, at a national level increasing. So when we're looking at sort of approaches in stalking, and I've got to be really cognizant here of not providing real specific kind of data on this, but actually, when we look at the priorities within the CSP plan, we look particularly at the new priorities around domestic abuse specifically. Actually, a lot of stalking and harassment offences and categorisations lay within that particular priority. And once again, there is a particular plan that is going to be, an action plan that exists that specifically breaks down for those offences and linked offences to that approaches. Within Warwickshire, there is quite a comprehensive structure as well. So not just at a CSP level, but we have to work actually across the county in a very similar way. So we have a Domestic Abuse and Sexual Assault Partnership Board, which oversees a number of specific subgroups. Some of those subgroups, such as the Domestic Abuse Steering Group, Harmful Practices Group, Safe Accommodation Group, and a number of other groups exist which pick up stalking and harassment specifically. So once again, there are specific actions in there. There was some advice, I think, provided at the last OSC about the Talk to Someone website as well, and kind of campaigns that are going to be running in Warwickshire specifically around that, and specific advice and guidance that are being produced on that. I think there's a couple of things perhaps just to add in relation to approaches to these things, because once again, at county level, there's a piece of analysis underway with those groups, which is looking at the role of perpetrators in that, and actually specific programmes that can be introduced to obviously tackle perpetrators in that space. I think that's something new that's going to come away from that, and potentially, once again, commission services or commission programmes that might potentially follow that as well. There are some specific projects which are being planned for next financial year within Warwickshire, but also within a Stratford perspective, which will be in schools, but will also be within community groups, which I don't necessarily want to talk about now because they're being developed, but actually I will be able to provide some quite comprehensive updates around for the next performance sort of CSP meeting.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Barnes. It's a really point. You're right. I think there was something in the Stratford Observer this week. Well, there was a particularly disturbing case, which I won't go into too much details. People can read that, but I think the perpetrator was imprisoned, and I think it highlighted the bravery of the victim as well. So it is a local issue. It's not just a national issue. It's a local issue, and I think if we can encourage the victims to speak out and support them in the most appropriate way as well, I think that is very important. Councillor Wally Huggins, you're next, please.
Yes, can we go back to the health partners, please? It's not a trick question. It's really one of the things that concerns me. This is anecdotally from residents who've tried to access the services and access the services for loved ones as well. Do we have any idea what the capacity is within these partnerships for drug and alcohol, their strategic plans, and what that actually involves? Because there's a big difference between giving out a leaflet and actually having the groups together for people to attend, the locality of that, the ease of access for people needing to get to those services as well. I've got two more questions, but I'll just take them in sequential order. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, for the question. Sorry, I was just busy writing there, so I don't forget to fully answer that. You're very right in terms of drug and alcohol services and services in general, in terms of them having the capacity to obviously deal with caseloads and to be able to deal with individuals who come forward, particularly when it comes to drugs and alcohol as well, taking the opportunity for those individuals who do present and engage, making sure that you've got capacity at the time in which to obviously engage with them during that particular window of engagement. So it's really critical that they have capacity there and then. There have been quite a lot of discussions at the county-wide drug and alcohol strategic partnership around capacity and around obviously the provision that services offer. Very, very recently, in terms of drug and alcohol support within Warwickshire, Change Grow Live has just been appointed as the new provider in relation to adult services, but also in relation to children's services as well, which is a new contract for them. And I believe as a part of those discussions, there have been obviously assurances around that provision and that access. What I would say, though, is that as a part of that meeting structure and as a part of the reporting process, if there is ever any feedback from residents, service users, and or charities and support agencies, actually, it's really encouraged through that partnership structure, and that's something that we as a district council feedback on, but also all the members of that partnership feedback on, in terms of actually how is the delivery of those services through those commission services going at a ground level. So that's something that we input on based on our experiences whenever we go to that partnership. So I would always encourage individuals, members of the community, elected members, to provide feedback from residents about how those services are run, because ultimately that can be discussed through those forums, and obviously challenges made where appropriate.
Yeah, thank you for that, but I would like some more details on capacity, especially if you've got that new group coming forward. I don't think it's... I just need a little bit more meat on the bones that I asked, if you don't mind. Moving on then. So you've mentioned that we're going to rural communities to exercise classes and art classes, etc. Can you give us some idea of the location of these exercise classes, etc., and the spread of that across the district, please?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. There is, and sorry, I'm just flicking through the papers here. There is a little bit of data just on page 70 of the report, and I appreciate this is just an overall snapshot of kind of a highlight, but I can provide more comprehensive information afterwards in terms of just the different types of engagements that we have. So referenced here, and I can finally remember the name of the operation I was talking about earlier, Operation Recall. So there's a little bit of information just there about the engagements around that specific operation, the provision of the toolbox events, members of the public engaged there. And then if you have a look at, and I appreciate this is a visual diagram, but I could provide some sort of quantitative figures about obviously the numbers of sort of community groups, etc., that we've engaged with. It just gives you a little bit of a spread of some of the kind of locations that we are engaging with and targeting. Certainly over the past year, so talking about April 24 to 2025, I know that we've been into over 100 different villages within South Warwickshire, and we've got to also bear in mind that the role of the Rural Crime Advisors is across South Warwickshire, which also includes Warwick District, hence some reference there. But I'd be happy to provide kind of more of a specific breakdown or some further information outside of this meeting, just building on that highlights report.
Found the map quite interesting on page 71 that's provided. Is that the same sort of activity, or is that not related to that? Can you just...
Yes, it does relate to that. I appreciate, I've got a grayscale version, so I can't see, but actually those dots have different things, activities linked to them and different engagements. So I can provide some further information on that, which breaks it down.
The map is useful because you can see there where perhaps there are rural communities that haven't had any input. Of course, as a Brales and Compton board member, I'll bring that up with you separately. But it does give an idea of other areas that perhaps could be, and also of course it's in the public domain. This document is with a map, so if you're Billy Burglar, you could see areas that have not perhaps had the information they need. Finally, then, can you talk me through, please? This is a commendably detailed report here in certain aspects, but there have been ongoing matters that money has been spent on. So I'm thinking about the lakes just north of Henley, where we had, even back in the day, 5 years ago, there was an awful lot of input there with CCTV cameras, etc. And there's still an awful lot of antisocial behaviour going on there. And I don't see it mentioned here specifically, but I don't think it's perhaps one of our greatest success stories. Let me put that in as kind a way as possible. There's still the residents of there are still deeply upset by the activities that are going on there. And I suppose I was going to ask for a meeting, but I do think it's important that we this is 5 years worth of antisocial behaviour. I'm pretty sure that the summer months have brought even worse behaviours as well. So what are we actually going to do then with our partners in order to help these residents and to curtail this totally unacceptable behaviour, please?
Well, I can say, Councillor Wally-Huggins, I was at a public meeting in the summer for this incident. Forgive me. Yes, I'm trying not to
Councillor
talk
Gist,
about
can you
the
just
area.
bring your mic?
Sorry.
Thank you. It's all right. I do it too, so don't worry.
And obviously it's quite complicated, I think, from a legal perspective, which Sam can, even in terms of the land ownership as to who can do what and where is quite complicated. And I know that officers have been looking at that at county. And obviously the MP has been involved as well. And we have an update meeting in early December to see where the partners are. I think Sam can give some more detail. I know as District Council we're quite limited. So we've been involved in the meetings, and the Parish Council sends me the reports every month, so I see them. But I think Sam can perhaps provide a bit more detail on sort of the legals.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gist. And just for clarity, we're talking about Earlswood Lakes. Okay, magic, thank you. So, yeah, in relation to there, I appreciate there have been ongoing concerns which, without going into kind of real specifics, relate to the lakes. concerns around forms of antisocial behaviour, namely obstruction of the lakes itself, so the way in which you drive across Earlswood Lakes. Particularly then you've got Malthouse Lane, whereby you've got a lot of double yellow parking infractions and then concerns about drug use there. This has been a concern within the community for quite a number of years. As a district council specifically, we've tried a number of different interventions there. So around about 4 years ago, we introduced a public space protection order, which looked at antisocial behaviour, kind of driving, car cruising activities. It looked at psychoactive substances, which subsequently has come into legislation now, and therefore the provisions of that wouldn't have been done at the time if the legislation had been there, and other forms of issues. That was in place for a 3-year period and was reviewed, and subsequently, after that review was undertaken, was decided not to be in place further or to put other provisions in there, so that was removed. During that period of time, we also installed a CCTV camera in Malthouse Lane as well, the details of which I provided quite a lot of information at an Audit and Standards Committee this year just around the performance of that, and some of the figures and performance can be found through those papers there. But once again, that supports the ability for Warwickshire Police to respond to incidents there, to be able to see what's happening live time there, or for us to gather evidence of antisocial behavioural crime, in which case we produce that evidence to the police in relation to those offences. As Councillor Gist has highlighted, there have, over the years, but more recently specifically, been public meetings and partner meetings about the latest sets of issues that have been taking place there. I think there are a number of actions and action plans which primarily a lot of the actions sit either with Warwickshire Police or Warwickshire County Council in relation to the road safety aspects of it. And without going into the specifics there are elements where they're reviewing the nature of the lakes and looking at road safety implications and mitigations that can take place. So there is ongoing discussion about those which are taking place.
So to go back to the public space protection orders, why is that no longer relevant for Earlswood Lakes, and when did that cease to be? When did that stop, please?
So a review was taken at the time and I'd have to get the specific dates for you as to when the order lapsed. But at the time there was a specific review that was undertaken in consultation with Warwickshire Police and the local partner agencies at that particular time. Effectively, it wasn't seen as an effective tool, and actually I think a lot of the challenges there were that actually officers would go and speak to those individuals, but actually, say for example, around the car cruising or obstruction, they would go and speak to the individuals, they would move off, subsequently they couldn't issue tickets, or the powers under the PSPO require the person to continue to commit the offence in order for, say for example, a ticket to be issued under it. So actually, the presence of officers being there and engaging was effectively doing what the PSPO would do anyway. There were certain provisions, as I outlined earlier, such as psychoactive substances, which subsequently came into legislation. So actually a lot of the provisions of the PSPO powers were then encapsulated within law anyway. So there was subsequently ways in which officers would still be using those powers under those new laws, which actually superseded the PSPO. So actually the necessity for some of those conditions didn't really relate there.
I would like the date, please, as soon as possible, when that ceased to be in existence. Thank you very much indeed.
Before we move on, I know members have got some detailed questions, which is fine, but sometimes the officers and the portfolio holder wouldn't necessarily have the details available to them. So if members indulge the officers and me with that request, if they've got some points that they want details about, can they coordinate through Mr Allison the queries, and Mr Allison pass them on to the Community Safety Manager, and that way the response can then come back to all the committees, see if members are happy with that? Good, super. So again, it's not trying to stop people asking questions, but sometimes, to be fair to officers and the portfolio holder, they wouldn't necessarily have all the detail with them. So Councillor Gist, please.
I just want to say to Councillor Wally Hoggins about the Rural Crime Advisors, if you like them, you know, your residents in Farnborough, for example, heard about them and thought, oh, right, thank you, we'd love to see them. And so I asked and they went. So if you have residents that would be interested as a coffee morning or whatever, they'd be more than happy to go, I'm sure.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Councillor Rolfe, please.
Very briefly, Chair, and for the sake of transparency, I believe yourself and Councillor Alcott both sit on the Community Safety Partnership, and I believe you should be declaring the interest. I haven't heard that interest declared, sorry. Just in case you speak, just to cover yourself, really.
I'll just speak to the legal officer for just 2 seconds. Yep, no, I thank you for that. Councillor Alcock, are you happy that you and I both declare we're members of the Community Safety Partnership? Yeah, I'm going to say, and it was sort of like hinted, but it should have been made more transparent because I mentioned the meeting yesterday. So, no. Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Alpha. That was a very helpful intervention. Much appreciated. Councillor Keithley, I'm sure we'll have another positive intervention from you as well. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Chair. Thank you very much, Sam. Enjoyed reading the report. It's very thorough. It's a simple question. It follows up on the antisocial behaviour stuff, really. In here, you talk about the action plan for antisocial behaviour. What we've just heard is an example where things have been rumbling on for a long time. It's quite complicated, all sorts of interventions. In fairly recent weeks, in my particular ward, there have been examples of antisocial behaviour, and residents feel that things aren't dealt with very quickly. I just wondered if you could explain within the action plan how you feel we're improving our responsiveness as partnership organisations together to antisocial behaviour, which is really blighting some residents' lives. Sometimes they feel as if, and I've sat in parish council meetings where the police have been there listening to the problems, but we seem almost incapable of finding fairly quick solutions. Is there anything you can add to that to help residents understand just how we do prioritise these issues within the plan?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. And I would completely agree. I think, you know, in terms of communication to key partners, stakeholders and residents, that's a really, really critical aspect of how we manage antisocial behaviour, particularly locational antisocial behaviour that might be affecting more than just a small number of individuals. So in terms of responsiveness and the plan, there are elements within the plan that look at community engagement, look at the kind of ways in which we will engage with key partners and communicate, particularly. That is an element which actually within subsequent authorities such as the police's antisocial behaviour policy, Warwick District Council's antisocial behaviour policy, which they're reviewing, and other partner agencies' policies actually being considered specifically within that in terms of obviously how information is provided to victims of antisocial behaviour but also to other key parties. It will always differ in certain areas both as to what we can disclose and what we can say, but also depending on the provision actually how we can deal with some of those issues. Say, for example, the specific issue that you're talking about in Meon Vale at the moment, you know, actually a number of individuals have been identified for certain issues taking place, and actually there are some interventions that are taking place and a specific policing approach, which I think is now gone out on Warwickshire Police social media around that. So actually, once again, I think that highlights that actually the wider engagement with the community actually through things like social media and obviously relevant sort of groups, forums, does need to take place and does need to be transparent. There is always going to be the balancing act, unfortunately, as to, well, actually, sometimes we need to go and speak to the individuals involved, whether that's issuing various notices, warnings, using our powers, or using the powers of others like Youth Justice or Warwickshire Police, etc., before we then put a wider message out to the community. So there's always going to be the balance, unfortunately, about when we release that information and how much we release on that. There is some separate operational things that I can update you on after this meeting in relation to that specific issue, which will hopefully assist.
Yeah, thanks. That's good, and I'm sure people in that location will be pleased to hear that some positive action has been taken.
Councillor Walcott, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. Going through this, I know we've touched on the crime caused by drug and alcohol use. I'm looking for if there's any figures on whether there's a relation to the cutting of mental health services and an increase in not necessarily crimes, but that police have had to action due to a mental health crisis. I just look at, I don't expect you to have it now, don't worry. That's something I can email Mr. Allison about as well. Also with the CCTV, with the new cameras that have gone up, including in my ward of Bishopton, have you seen a coalition, wrong word, have you seen a reduction in crimes being reported because the CCTV is there, or have you seen a increase elsewhere because the crimes are moving to a different area? Is it possible to look at those types of figures? And I do have one more afterwards. Oh, please.
I'll let Sam answer, but I think the because is quite a difficult thing to define. So I think we might be able to, I don't know if it's appropriate for you to have the figures that you're asking for and what we have, but the because is possibly not something we can answer.
Yeah, I suppose the interpretation around crime statistics and local crime trends and patterns is always quite challenging. We do have a number of mechanisms. We have kind of monthly and or quarterly reports which do analysis on particular trends, once again going down to kind of LSOA and kind of street level effectively, where we can get that breakdown. So we provide a lot of information to what's called the Insight Service at the County Council, where we can actually talk about interventions or things that are applied in that area. So those analysts are then cognizant of actually here's a number of other things that have taken place in that area that they can then interpret when they're looking at those statistics. Because once again, crime data alone often doesn't give us much of an informed picture, but then when we look at the interventions, we look at things going on and wider context, we can provide a bit of a narrative. We can kind of loosely say it might be because of X, Y, Z intervention and provide a loose causation behind it, but kind of saying definitively we have done X, Y, Z and that's led to X, Y, Z can sometimes be challenging. I think when we usually put CCTV cameras, and this is just from kind of other experience, we can go through a number of different kind of ways in which crime is affected by CCTV. Often when it's first put into an area, people are particularly cognizant of its existence there because there's signage, people are talking about it more. It's visually, new street furniture, so people are often more aware of it. After a period of time, individuals might become a little bit more adapted to the fact it's there, but we do often find that there's often a surge, let's just say, in actually because that new technology is there, we get more detections of offences taking place, and then typically you'll see a reduction in it because obviously those interventions have started to kick in and it's just a continual. So usually when we first introduce them, actually we do sometimes see increased detections.
Councillor Ballinger, please.
I did have a...
Yes, I do apologise, Councillor. Other people have had more than one question, so I do apologise. So come on in, and then I'll bring Councillor Ballinger. Sorry, Councillor Ballinger.
Thank you, Chair. And just finally, with the list on the hate crime action plan, I'm quite aware that hate crime is on the increase, especially around racism. That has been apparent to me for a little while now. Are there action plans to deal with hate crime, whether it be racism, homophobia, etc., and targeting on social media? There seems to be a lot going around at the moment and some appalling language which seems to be allowed by some platforms, bizarrely, but it seems to be on the increase in quite a dramatic way. Are there plans in place to start looking at individuals who use unacceptable language that could possibly be listed as a hate crime?
Yeah, so as a part of the hate crime action plan, as you've already said, there's a number of kind of thematic areas and approaches to that. Once again, social media and the kind of online platforms that exist, in particular, you know, at a national level, we've seen a lot of trends around that and increases in hate crime. Within Warwickshire, in particular, in most recent quarters, actually, we've seen decreases. We've seen a lot of decreases actually within Warwickshire and Stratford district specifically. So it's very much in line with those reductions. But like you said, there's a very proactive approach through that plan. There are specific elements and actions within that plan that are specifically targeted around the online aspects of that. So once again, whether that's in terms of raising awareness, campaigns, but there is also elements about individuals that might commit sort of hate crime offences, the ways in which they're dealt with, once again contained within that plan. And that plan is obviously subject to review. There's actually quite a lot of engagement events taking place at the moment on behalf of the Hate Crime Partnership, advertised by Equip at the moment, which are in the public domain. So once again, there's an opportunity for residents, elected members and community groups to engage with those events and input to that as well. But once again, I can send that round with Mr. Allison.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. I know Junaid and his team at Equip do a really good job and positive job on this. I've got Councillor Ballinger and Councillor Wally Hoggins, and then I'll draw it to a close. We've been going on for a good while, and I think Sam needs a drink to ease his throat. So, Councillor Ballinger, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question, it's a comment. So I'm happy to give way to Councillor Wally Hoggins if she wants to ask a question, and I just wanted to make a comment.
I'm happy for you to make a comment now then.
I just wanted to give thanks to the community safety team recently, actually, Chair, because I witnessed quite a horrendous crime in Stratford-upon-Avon town centre. And I had quite a poor experience with 101. And the community safety team and the CCTV team supported with tracking down the situation and got it concluded, and the police are dealing with it now. And I just wanted to make a comment and say thank you to them, because they work incredibly hard.
Well, I'm sure the officers will particularly be pleased to that, because often they get a lot of criticism, unfounded criticism, and very few thanks. So your thanks are much appreciated. Thanks, you. And it's in a public record as well. Councillor Wally Hoggins, are you okay?
Yeah, it was similar really to my colleague councillor here, but actually I was a victim of hate crime a fortnight ago. I actually tolerated the most appalling abuse. I was followed down the street. And I do think that there is an element, and I was on my own as well. It was during the campaign, of course, but nevertheless, I do think that it might be worth having a quick briefing for all councillors as to what is you're supposed to put up with and what you're not, and that is put out to all residents to try to tone down some of the behaviour that is being experienced. Somebody actually came out to assist me, but it was deeply unpleasant. It was not on the high street. It was not witnessed by anybody other than myself. And I do think that we need to perhaps be more proactive in how we let the communities know that this is unacceptable behaviour, and we need to be empowered as councillors. I mean, I did tell him that he must refrain from doing what he was doing, but it's still when it happens to you, you realise how little training we actually have on this and how vulnerable we are as individual councillors, and this came from nowhere. So that's a statement. But finally, I have to ask this question, I generally do. Do you have enough resources in order to deliver the services that you think the residents in Stratford need? Thank you.
I think I can probably answer that. And the simple answer is no, because I think community safety, you could put as much money in the world into it and there'd always be something else. So we have to direct our resources where they'll be the most effective.
I think we do have to say that the point about prioritising resources is pertinent. Again, we obviously come here, we seek assurance of scrutiny committee that they are being used in the right way, at the right place, at the right time, all the rights, etc. So I think we obviously, I think it's a fair point to ask. I've got one other point that I'd like to raise, but again, if the information could be sent round after. Obviously, as Councillor Roth pointed out, Councillor Orcott and I are on the Community Safety Partnership, and we do have some knowledge of this. And it's about repeat offenders and how we're trying to deal with the repeat offenders, particularly around shoplifting and things like that, and how they provide a disproportionate amount of the crime. So I think that would be interesting to see whether the repeat offenders are committing a disproportionate amount of the crimes, such as shoplifting and things like that, but other ones not so like that. But I think that was the easiest example I could think of. So if that could be included in the information that we send around to members, that would be helpful. Thank you. Right then, I'd like to express and continue the vein that Councillor Wally-Huggins, Councillor Ballinger mentioned, that thanking the officers for all the work they do. And thank you, Mr. Slovensic and Councillor Giss, for coming to the meeting and answering questions in an open and transparent way.
Just wanted to say, we could always have more resource, but we are very fortunate in our community safety manager and his team, because they're very gifted and they're very dedicated, and we as councillors are very lucky to have them.
Thank you, and well done, Sam, for giving Councillor Giss that £5 to mention that. So, no, seriously, no, that was only a light-hearted comment. It wasn't meant seriously. I'm sure it was taken the spirit it was. So, again, thanks once again. Thank you. I'm proposing that we have. Mr. Nash wants to come in. He wants to. Thank you, Mr. Nash.
Just on the point that Councillor Wally-Huggins said about training, we have done code of conduct training, which basically gets involved in these types of situations. Also, we've had social media training. I can send the members further guidance on code of conduct and social media. So if you get into situations, then you know basically how to proceed with the matter. So I can, or you can come and contact me, and I'll assist you.
Councillor Keithley?
Yeah, thanks. I think we had, just to add to Mace's comment, we had some training on personal safety as well, didn't we? That wasn't code of conduct, Mace, so that was sort of personal safety and understanding how to keep yourself out of trouble. But, you know, as Councillor Wally-Huggins said, you sometimes even walking around, you're just doorstepped by people, and if they're aggressive towards you, it's difficult to deal with.
Chair, I agree. Yes, you've had personal training as well. So, I mean, it's all connected, to be fair. I'm just trying to make sure your council stay out of trouble, that's all. So,
It wasn't a question of me being in trouble, Maester. It was a question of a member of the public thinking it was acceptable to behave in that way towards an individual. So, yeah, I've attended the courses and, you know, I've done various training to do with personal protection. But I do think that we perhaps need to remind the public sometimes of what is acceptable, which is part of what my statement was, is getting it out there to the public that this is unacceptable behaviour and it's crossing a line in which you could be have a bit of a particular type of door knock. Thank you.
Right, yeah, I think again it's a fair point. We've got to, you know, we put ourselves forward. You know, we do the mileage, just knock on the doors, but you know, but we shouldn't have to receive any abuse. You know, we've all got different opinions on things, but you know, we should be discussing. I was going to say argue, discussing those in a civilised manner, not being subject to threats or physical violence. So, ending on a quite prophetic note for me, you know, can be serious at times as chair. So I think that is important. And again, if we do just keep this on, you know, as a hot topic, that we need to make sure we are safe, and the members of the public do need to treat us with respect. They might disagree with us, but you know, we've gone through the elected democratic process to be councillors, so therefore we do serve some respect. So Thank you for that. And whilst Councillor Gist and Mr Semensek leave the building, or they leave the chairs, I'm proposing we have a 5-minute break. Thank you. Right, well, welcome back. Slight delay caused by a bit of a queue at the coffee machine, but we did need to break the stretch our legs after concentrating on a serious subject for nearly an hour. So thank you for that, bearing with us, members. So next item on the agenda is item number 7, which is to receive a verbal update on the Stratford hydropower feasibility report. And Mr. Perks is agreed to do that for us. Thank you, Mr. Perks.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. As Councillor Crumps asked, I'll give a brief update on where we are with the hydro report. As you will be aware, in the last budget there was an allocation made of approximately £1.5 million to sort of cover the potential costs of this. On the back of that, we commissioned a feasibility study, which was the agreed first phase of the project. We commissioned that from a company called Renewables First, who are experienced in providing sort of hydro schemes in the area. They visited the site and carried out a number of surveys, and also visited the Royal Shakespeare Company with the potential electrical off-takers for this, and produced a feasibility study for us. The edited highlights of it was they concluded there was a sort of a 1.5 metre head fall at approximately a 10 metre cubed per second flow in the Avon at the appropriate point on the weir, and proposed that we could sort of put in a solution that comprised 2 sort of Archimedes screws side by side, and that would generate around about 350 megawatt hours of electricity per year, subject to the licence that we could get from the Environment Agency, because we have to maintain a flow in the river to sort of keep fish and things going. Basically, you extract some water from the river, you keep a base flow, and you reinstate the water to the river sort of downwind of the turbines. So looking at the potential of the water that we could take out safely, it would give us about 350 megawatt hours per year of electricity. The report also looked at sort of off-taking the electricity. Basically, to have any sort of hope of being financially viable, we needed to sell that as retail electricity and not back into the grid, because the money you get for putting electricity in the grid is significantly lower than a retail sale. So basing it on a realistic subsidised price, such that the RSC got some benefit for taking the electricity, but we got the bulk of the value of it, it was determined that the project was a feasible project. It would save approximately 72 tonnes of carbon per year. It should be deliverable between the £1.5 million budget. However, the payback period for this was right up at 19.5 years. So whilst it's viable, I think it would be fair to say it was marginal, and the internal rate of return for it was around about 2.7%, which wouldn't be enough for it to be commercially attractive. So that was where we were with the technical feasibility. We then also did a sort of a bit of analysis of risk around the project, and the key risks that we identified were the climatic conditions and sort of climate change. To be efficient, the turbines rely on sort of a fairly steady state of flow. They obviously don't work terribly well when there's too little flow in the river, because they don't have the potential energy from the water. But similarly, they're not particularly well suited to flood conditions. You have to turn them off in flood conditions. So the window in which they operate is whilst not narrow, it's not all of the time, and it seems to be we're having more times where we've got low or high flows in the river. So looking forward, that would, towards the back end of the project, seem sort of to be increasing the risk rather than reducing it. There would also be the need to install some infrastructure on land that we don't own. We'd need to provide a small turbine house on land that's owned by the Avon Navigation Trust. We'd had initial discussions with them, and they were supportive of the project. However, if they started wanting a significant return for the use of their land, that would cut into the financial viability of it. That would have to be built into the model, which it hasn't yet done. And there were also some concerns, whilst there's a lot of mitigation in the report, about the impacts on the river ecosystem. There would be fish passes and things incorporated within it, but it will have an impact because it's disturbing the flow of water. So the conclusion that we sort of came to in that for the moment was that it could be done, but I think when we had an informal discussion with the Cabinet, it was whether that was the right thing to do. And I'm currently exploring an alternative project, which is, and it's come up in various guises recently, which is the solar canopies project on the leisure centre car park, investing the money into providing some solar arrays on sort of effectively carport structures, similar to a lot of the European models that we've seen. I've commissioned a feasibility report on this from the same company who did the other one, so we've got a comparison to sort of see what the capital requirement would be and what the return would be. The issue that's been sort of delaying that slightly, there are a couple of issues. Firstly, it's getting sort of detailed supplier quotes to make sure we're basing this on accurate information. And secondly, it's finding an off-taker for the power who we can sort of rely on. The obvious place to put it would be the leisure centre, but we've already put a solar array onto the leisure centre. And the way that the leisure centres are contracted out to everyone active, the way that everyone active buy their energy as a group is they buy it in bulk. So the less they buy, in some ways, their energy at the other centres becomes more expensive. So we're needing to try and square that circle about how we can put that in. So we are looking at a couple of other off-takers to see if we could get a long-term arrangement, perhaps with the Crown Plaza Hotel or one of the other businesses around there to take that off. We're expecting that final report sort of imminently, and that will inform the decision that we make on whether we take the hydro project forward, whether we do the solar canopy project, or whether we don't do either. And I would hope to have that information in time to inform the budget, which will be with you in February. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Keithley, thank you.
Thanks, Tony. That was a useful update. Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick questions. So, on the basis of what you said, the internal rate of return is only 2.7%. A couple of questions regarding that. You mentioned that there would be a discount to the retail price, and just with the RSC, can you give us an idea of what sort of discount that might be over the retail unit price? And secondly, in terms of impacts, I wonder whether or not, you didn't mention it, but I wonder whether or not noise impacts came into play as well. Tony, if you could comment on that, on the screws, the noise in respect to the screws in the river.
So I was just obviously some of these things could be potentially commercially sensitive, so I was just querying with Mr. Perks what he could or couldn't say, but I think Mr. Perks is happy, so I wouldn't try to talk over you, Councillor Keith. I was just trying to find out.
No, that's fine, thanks.
I'd have to check the report in detail for the exact sort of figures, but it's broadly a 10% reduction. It's not sort of half price, but it's got to be enough to make it financially attractive to them. But yes, it's that sort of figure. There's obviously the incentive that they would have zero carbon locally generated electricity, which would be good for their environmental credentials. So that was the sort of figure we were looking at. We haven't carried out a detailed noise assessment analysis at this stage. The consultants have advised, we've looked at a similar scheme in Pershore, and that there is a level of background noise, but they feel that in the location it's proposed, it's far enough away from receptor dwellings that it wouldn't be a problem. But to be straight, we haven't carried out a detailed noise assessment as yet.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wally-Hoggins, please.
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed that it was a verbal report, if I'm honest. I was expecting a written report. Can we assume that there will be a written report on these two options coming forward? I have another question as well, or another statement.
Yes, apologies that you're disappointed. The agenda set it as a verbal report, so that's what I brought today. There would obviously be, yes, a written paper if and when we sort of make a decision on the budget implications, that'll all be set out, yes.
Next question.
Yeah, carry on, Councillor Wally.
Yeah, I'm actually, of course, delighted at the moment that this is perhaps in abeyance, because I discovered recently, to do with proposed housing developments in Shipston and Stour, that otters seemingly seem to be more protected than the great crested newt. And of course we have a lot of evidence that there are otters on this stretch of the river. And is that being considered about the disturbance of their habitat with regard to these proposals for the hydroelectric scheme? It is simply staggering, and quite rightfully so, that otters are protected. There are otters in that stretch of the River Avon, and is that being considered by the work that's continued to be done with regard to this £1.5 million on a hydropower electric scheme? Thank you.
Please, Mr. Perks, sorry about that.
Yes, the ecological impact of the installation will be considered if it is to go forward.
Sorry about that, Mr. Perks. I was trying to note down who was going to speak next, and then, yeah, I do apologise. So I've got Councillor Johnston, Councillor Keithley, then Councillor Littlewood next. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perks. I just wanted some assurance that the imminent report of the alternative will be available when we set our budget for 26-27.
Yes, I'm anticipating having it any day now, so that should be well in advance of the budget. I chased it this morning.
Right, Councillor Keith, any follow-up? Councillor Johnston, are you okay? No,
Happy with that assurance.
no, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Keith.
Sorry, thanks, Chair. Just to a couple of things. First of all, the question of the otters. We've got otters in Luddington, where I live, but they travel a long way. Apparently, they've got huge territories, 3 or 4 miles. Question is whether or not we were able to use the Pershaw turbine installation as a pretty good benchmark to give us some certainty of what was likely to reality, because without that, maybe there's quite a lot of risks. Did we able to look at that?
Yes, the first thing I did was visit the Pershaw installation and sort of met the owners of it and the guy who's been operating it for getting on for 20 years now. The main, if it would be helpful, I can summarise the experience that he's had. That he did it from an ideological point of view rather than a strictly commercial point of view, but it has paid for itself and it does make a small return for him. He's considered it a worthwhile investment. The big advantage that they have at Pershaw over us is they've got about 2.3 metres of head, whereas we've only got 1.5. So the potential energy in that installation is greater, and they've got an off-taker for their electricity. But it wasn't without its issues, but over that period of time, he felt it had been a valuable installation.
Really quick follow-up. You said 350 megawatt hours potentially. That's significantly more than Pershaw have achieved, is it not? I thought when I read about Pershaw getting prepared for this, it was more like $250,000 on their installation.
I'm afraid I haven't got those figures to hand, so I wouldn't want to mislead you, but I can find that out.
Might be worth just checking. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. And the follow-up sometime would be what context is 350 megawatts, because I've no idea. I'm an accountant by trade, so I do apologise for that. Councillor Littlewood, please.
Well, strangely, you should mention that. 350 megawatt hours per annum. My roof produces 5 megawatt hours per annum, so 70 roofs like mine would be sufficient to equal that output or that production, and that would cost £10,000 per roof, which would be £700,000. So possibly more commercially viable than a hydro scheme, and it won't have otters on the roof either.
If I can comment on that, I think you're right, and that's exactly why we're looking at the alternative project, that maybe solar would give you a sort of better return for a lower risk, and that may be the project that the members favour, but we were asked to look into that one, so we're looking into both.
If I may just comment, I wasn't making a dig. I promise you. I just wanted to put it into context, and you know, personally, I'm very supportive of the idea of car park and canopies wherever they can be found. At the end of the day, this does two things, doesn't it? It's carbon offsetting as well as possibly producing a reasonable commercial return into the future.
No, I think the innovation was very helpful. I found it helpful because I hadn't got the context of that, and it was appreciated. So I didn't take any offence by you raising that point, so I think that's helpful. I've got Councillor Ballinger, then Councillor Rice, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think my question's sort of being answered, kind of, but for my simple mind, could we have an understanding of what that power equates to in terms of, I don't know, like, what would it generate to power in terms of buildings, and sort of what would that then equate to? I have a simple mind, Chair. I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, we could do that, and we'll produce that in the report, a comparison, sort of like how many football pitches or how many elephants equivalent. Yes, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Yeah, I'll take that note.
Councillor Ballinger, there's nothing wrong with having a simple mind, because I certainly have one. So anything that makes it easier and quantifies things in a simple way, I'm more than happy to. And thank you for your intervention. I think it's very helpful. Councillor Rice, please.
Thank you, Chair. If I understood your report correctly, Tony, one of the issues with the alternative project of solar panels on car park is what to do with the electricity. I was just wondering whether it could be combined with another item on the agenda, electric vehicle charging.
Yes, we're actively looking at that at the moment. To do that, you'd need to put it into a battery storage system, and then, without wishing to sort of bore the committee with all the details, you then get the complication of who owns the battery storage system and who has liability for the failure of the electrical supply when you've got an electric charger. And so there are complications with it, but it is definitely a possibility that seems to make sense, and we are exploring.
Right, any other questions? I've got one, and again, I'm mindful of any commercial sensitivity. And preempting what was going to be in the report, I'd be interested to know what the costs of both those feasibility studies are, and if that has to be done in confidential, I'm more than happy that we do that, or you'll bring it forward in some report to Cabinet. So just from the information, please.
Yeah, happy to share that, but I do think it is confidential information, so we'll need to share that with the committee probably outside of the public meeting.
I think that is sensible, but again, I think as a member of the Scrutiny Committee, I think it's a fair point to ask, but I appreciate the sensitivities around this, so I was trying to be mindful of the position. Any other questions for Mr. Perks? Okay. Yeah. Yep. Great. Thank you for that, Mr. Perks. You're very welcome. Next item is the Cabinet meeting on the 1st of December. We've got several points that we're talking about, including EV charging points. But I'd like to start, especially as we've got officers here, on the notice of motion about supporting the reallocation of some new housing from Stratford-on-Avon to Coventry. I just wondered if you could open the button on that for us, Mr. Perks, please.
Yes, certainly, Chairman, and we've got Joe at the back who can probably help me out with some of the more technical details, but I'll kick us off to mix my sporting metaphors.
Good
I think we've got a notice of motion which is suggesting that we approach Coventry with a view to sort of taking on some of our housing allocation. The report that you have in front of you suggests that we don't support the notice of motion, and I'll just sort of outline some of the headline reasons for that. The government have got a standard method for allocating housing numbers across the country, which we would be expected to meet through our local plan. When we commissioned our local plan, we established the housing number requirements through a thing called the HEDNA, which is the Housing and Economic Development Needs Assessment, which was the methodology that we needed to sort of carry out to inform our plan. And then the government issued a revised methodology as recently as December 2024. And what this essentially did was, in the old system, we would have our allocation of numbers and a duty to cooperate, where we would have to cooperate with the urban centres who couldn't meet their own needs to take some of their housing. And that, in the housing market areas that Stratford is connected to, that is primarily Coventry and Birmingham. The new government methodology increased the numbers required for Stratford, but hopefully has reduced our requirement to take housing as a duty to cooperate from Coventry to effectively reset the baseline to something that was more realistic. And that's the number that we're currently planning on. We've learned from previous experience when preparing a local plan that it's really important the plan is evidence-led. Otherwise, it tends to get sort of thrown out at examination, which just delays the adoption of the plan and increases the time where we have less level of control of our planning situation. As officers, we consider it's important that we've got a robust plan to go forward with. And the final point is that the South Warwickshire plan and the Coventry plans are at different sort of positions. Currently, the Coventry plan is, I understand it, at examination, and it wouldn't really be appropriate to raise additional matters at this stage of their plan. So whilst we're continuing to work with and alongside Coventry, we don't feel that we would recommend supporting the motion at this stage. Joe or I will take any questions.
Thank you for that. Councillor Alcott, please.
Thank you, and thank you for that explanation as well, Mr. Perks. Hi, Joe. Because of what's just been said, and because what's already in the report, I'm just querying why this has come to overview and scrutiny, because it is already down that for the recommendation to council. I'm just querying, what are we actually scrutinising here? We've had the report with the reasons laid out clearly, and now we've just had a verbal report, thank you, again. I just want to query, what exactly are we looking to scrutinise now?
I think this report is going immediately back to Cabinet, so alongside sort of the reports that you get, if the Open Union Scrutiny Committee chose to take a different view or thought there were additional sort of items to be put in there in line with most of the Cabinet reports you scrutinise, the idea would be that this would be reported back through your chairman to the Cabinet when they consider this matter at their meeting on Monday. I don't think there's any more to it than that, unless, Howard, have you got anything?
Yeah, I can say, I think in overall terms, we could say that about most of the reports on the Cabinet that we bring forward. I think it was just brought forward because it was something that members are doing, obviously, notice motion. Members of the public have raised some of the things as well by saying, oh, why are we taking these things up, taking other people's needs on? So I think, one, it's to get the information out in the public domain, to see what the debate is, why we can't do this. And I think Mr Perk's explanation of Coventry City Council going through their examination in public is quite a pertinent point as well. So I think there are, I can understand where you come from, Councillor. I've got no problem with you raising that point, so I think that's a fair and valid point. But I think we have to tease one or two things out and also be transparent to residents who and sometimes are not so well informed, shall we say, and come out, oh, why are we doing this sort of thing? So if we are examining it in public, in both here and at Cabinet, I think we're fulfilling our duty to be open and transparent and saying the reasons why. So hopefully that's my point of view. I'm sure officers have not jumped in and said I'm talking rubbish there. Well, not on this occasion. And I think that is a reasonable explanation. Councillor Passingham, do you want to come in, please?
Well, I proposed the motion, and it was prompted by the fact that the CPRE have done an analysis of the housing in Coventry, particularly because their housing allocation was almost cut by well over a half in the new targets. But they'd done an analysis because obviously there was a lot of housing going to be allocated in Coventry before, that there is capacity in Coventry for 8,000 houses on brownfield sites. This is the CPRE analysis. And the report hasn't actually answered, hasn't commented on that. And I think that was in the original motion. The stating that the CPRE said that, and I just wondered if there's any comment that you could make now on that.
Do you want to come in, please?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I suppose just going back to the point that Tony Parris made was that regardless of any capacity within surrounding areas, it's the duty to cooperate requires each authority to demonstrate its ability to meet its own needs. So Stratford has been set an allocation of required number of homes, and it's for us to identify land to meet that need, and only where there is clear evidence that we can't meet our own needs, then we would engage with our neighbouring authorities. So obviously not just Coventry, and as it was mentioned that Stratford actually sits within two housing market areas, so obviously Coventry and Warwickshire, so it's all of the other authorities in Warwickshire and Coventry, plus the Greater Birmingham Black Country HMO, which is made up of 14 local authorities. So if we had the evidence to suggest that we can't meet our own need, it would then be a case of engaging with all of those neighbouring authorities as to whether they could take any of their need. And as the report sets out, we don't have any evidence at this stage. Obviously, the local plan is still progressing, but we don't have any evidence at this stage to suggest that Stratford District can't meet its own need, and therefore it wouldn't be appropriate for us to approach any other authorities, regardless of, or not whether they've got any extra spare capacity. If we can meet our own need within our own district, then it's not appropriate through the planning process to ask neighbouring authorities to take any of our need. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, thank you for that. Do you want to follow up, Councillor Passingham, and then I'll bring in Councillor Wally-Hoggins and Councillor Keith?
Yeah,
All
the
three of you? Or?
I mean, obviously... Oh.
Sorry. Carry on. Sorry.
The fact that so many sites were put forward in the call for sites that could take all that housing, but you're going through the South Warwickshire local plan, and you're obviously...
Councillor Passingham, I appreciate you're trying to speak to the officer,
right, okay.
and that is very commendable, but unfortunately
Right,
you're not
yeah.
speaking into the
Okay.
microphone. Thank you.
There are enough sites, but are all of them appropriate? And you are weeding lots of them out in the South Warwickshire local plan as being inappropriate or not sustainable. Can that not be taken into account at all? The fact that a lot of them would not be going into the South Warwickshire local plan, and so there could be possibly a case made for we haven't got enough sites to take the capacity from Coventry.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, Councillor Passingham, we had over 800 sites submitted through the various call for sites processes, and the officers have been obviously going through all of those sites, assessing them against constraints and whether just because a site is submitted doesn't mean it's suitable or deliverable, etc., etc. So part of the work that the team have been doing on the local plan is to assess all of those sites. That work is coming to a conclusion now. And you're right, some of the sites that were submitted won't be suitable for development and will be kind of, not taken forward in the local plan. But we don't have any evidence at the moment to suggest that there won't be enough sites that are suitable and are deliverable to meet the need within Stratford District and South Warwickshire, obviously with Warwick as well. So yes, not all of those sites will be suitable. Some of them will be on floodplains or have environmental and acceptable environmental constraints, etc., etc. But we don't have any evidence to suggest that there aren't enough that we can put forward to meet our own needs. Obviously, that work is still concluding; it's still ongoing, and obviously, as the plan progresses, that will become clearer. But we don't have any evidence at the moment to suggest that we need to engage with neighbouring authorities to help us meet our need.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Can I bring in Councillor Wally-Hoggins now, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Again, we're spending time on this notice of motion, and I do think that it was inadvisable to have been brought to council in the first place because it just showed, on some ground, it showed a lack of understanding of how planning quotas work, and I think therefore then it leads me into saying or suggesting that perhaps we need a half an hour update on this, on how it affects neighbours and so forth, because as I said, you categorically stated here that there's no evidence to suggest that we can't fulfil this. I mean, were any conversations had that suggested that we were in a position that we couldn't fulfil this? What triggered the notice of motion in the first place? That's what's concerning me, that usually the notice of motion is looked at really, really critically and carefully, but what was it that triggered that being brought? I'm at a loss, but do we need more training for people so they understand these things? I do have an analogy, but unfortunately it's not. I can't repeat it in public. But we're all very concerned about the housing numbers, but just passing the book and flicking it over the fence and hoping that somebody else is going to catch it is I think is regrettable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wally-Hoggins. Your points are noted. Thank you. Councillor Keithy, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to say I would disagree with that last statement. I think this is a really interesting issue to bring forward. I think the report demonstrates, as Joe has said, that the likelihood is that we will be able to show provision for enough suitable sites as we go through our process. However, Councillor Passingham has raised this issue, and it's really relevant because our residents are asking why we're taking all this extra housing. He's raised a very important point that Coventry has got a lot of brownfield opportunity. which could be redeveloped. Now, within the process of individual authorities cooperating to meet the needs of housing, it might be, I suppose, and it's a sort of question for Joe, might it be that whilst we have enough, if Birmingham and the surrounding areas of Birmingham don't have enough, they would cooperate with Coventry to look at Coventry's surplus brownfield opportunity. So in the bigger picture, it might mean that Birmingham perhaps wouldn't come to the Stratford district to look for space. They would instead go to Coventry. Does that make sense? Could you comment on that, Joe?
Yes, and members may be aware that the reforms to the planning system are requiring more of a regional approach to strategic planning through the creation of spatial development strategies, if I've got my wording right. And the 7 West Midland Mets, including Coventry and Birmingham, Solihull, Sandwell, etc., they are already starting work on their spatial development strategy. And that is that's a different way moving forward in the future. I think the government recognised this kind of, it's not an ideal situation where every authority is kind of working in isolation to meet its own need. And the whole idea, one of the ideas of the spatial development strategies moving forward in the future is to have a more coordinated sub-regional approach to distributing housing and employment growth across the sub-region rather than individual authorities looking at it individually. So those kind of issues that you raise, Councillor Keithley, will come to the fore more in the future. In terms of your specific question on Birmingham and Coventry at the moment, Coventry isn't actually in the Greater Birmingham housing market area. So although they're in the West Midlands Met, they're not in the Greater Birmingham. They're not one of the 14 in the Greater Birmingham housing market area, but they are in the Coventry and Warwickshire housing market area. So whereas Stratford is in a housing market area with both Coventry and Birmingham in the 2 separate housing market areas, they're not in the same market area, if that makes any sense at all.
Thank you. I mean, that is a little bit complicated, obviously, but what I think in respect of Councillor Passingham's position on this is I think people will be interested to hear that there is capacity in Coventry that might be able to meet the needs of a wider strategic demand for housing if we can overcome this issue of whether it sits in one group or another group of authorities. And that might be an issue to take up. Thank you very much for your explanation.
Councillor Rice, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going back to your explanation, your reasons why this particular notice of motion was chosen for us to look at today, because I would submit to you that another notice of motion on neighbourhood plan finance would be far more pertinent for our residents to consider in this meeting. I think the fact that the government has removed finance for the creation of neighbourhood plans, I think is very critical to their future. And the notice of motion, which is suggesting that we provide funding for parish councils to create neighbourhood plans, is very important. And I do think it perhaps should have been on the agenda at least as much as the notice of motion. This is not a question, obviously, because I'm, other than perhaps I should frame it into a question and say, why wasn't it?
That one is actually going, I've been told, it is actually going to full council, so there will be a full debate on that one. So that was why, and obviously, as Councillor Guest said earlier, we do have to prioritise our time and resources, and obviously we know this meeting does go on a good while, probably due to my rambling, so I do apologise, but I think we are limited in that time because that one's going to full council. That is why we've done that. Councillor Littlewood, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just following on from what you were saying, Joe, with regards to the complexity of the fact that sites exist doesn't mean they're developable in any way. And I think that really is where we need to go back to, just for those watching. I think the clarity of the fact that brownfield sites are there, and yes, emotionally, I want to see brownfield sites used because they're wasteland and could be used in a positive way to create better communities. However, the realities, the stark realities are that brownfield sites, by their very nature, cost a lot more to be made available for building, and developers are commercial. And it's clear that at the end of the day, it's market pricing, and if there isn't a profit in it, then commercial operations won't go that way. And I think that is part of the flaws with this government's policies. Really, they've not thought that through very carefully. So it's just a comment. I don't want to ask a question as such, unless I can ask for comment on what I've just said.
Oh, I'm sure the officers wouldn't mind commenting on some part of your speech there, Mr. Councillor.
Yeah, I recognise the issues you raise, and I'm sure, as my planning team do, as they sort of try and work with the development industry, we can give permissions for development, but it does need to be commercially viable for it to be put into production. And there are often sort of higher costs for developing brownfield and greenfield lands, and it's an ideology that we have to sit within government policy and work with what we're given. Jo and her team's trying to strike a difficult balance of making sure that we're delivering the development that's required of us in the most effective way. But
thank you. If there's no further questions, I will raise one. I can understand residents do raise any issues about Coventry, because in their eyes, they seem to have more infrastructure available currently to support the housing numbers, major hospitals being one of them. So I think that is right, again, why we ask the questions. My question relates to the 5-year housing land supply. Obviously, we haven't got the 5-year housing land supply now, and we have the prospect of approving more houses or more sites to build up our numbers to get to the 5-year housing land supply, which I believe will take a couple of years. I'm getting to the question, I promise. I'll have to tell myself off in a minute. Because of these potential additional sites or sites being brought forward, will we still have the capacity to meet our own needs in light of us not having the 5-year housing land supply?
I'm not sure I completely understand your question, Councillor Quint, but I think if you're saying that the sites that might come forward in the period where we don't have a 5-year housing land supply, because our base date for the local plan, our new local plan, is April 2025, they will count towards the requirement that we need to find for the local plan. So any sites that get permission from April 2025 will count towards this overall figure that we're requiring for the local plan. So obviously if more houses get, then that will reduce the requirement that we need to find more sites in the local plan. So I don't know. So it's not both.
Yeah,
if that
no,
makes sense.
I think that's fine, and I think the implications of that is that the houses are more likely to be, or the approvals are more likely to be front-loaded as part of the local plan rather than over the period. Is that correct?
I think, I'm not sure what you mean by front-loaded.
Like bringing the sites forward. Obviously, we're bringing the sites forward, aren't we?
Through the local plan. Sorry, Councillor Potts probably understands the question
I
better than I do.
I think I understand the question a bit more. Yes, I think there is, to restore the 5-year housing land supply, we will need to grant some permissions early in the plan. Once that is, because we're sort of effectively behind the line, behind the trajectory that's required at the moment. So as we reach that line, the extent of development will reduce as we sort of flatline to sort of what we would normally. We're making up a shortfall in the early years with a view to sort of a stable platform going forward. I think, is that answering your question?
Yeah, Brent, I'm glad you understand. Apologies, Chair, for my... obviously, Mr Perks has worked with me longer, so he can interpret my ramblings easy, but I think the point was there in general. Councillor Coucher, thank you for coming forward. Would you just like to add to that, please? Could you just make sure?
I think Mr. Perks has outlined that quite correct. I think it's very important we don't get these two things muddled up. The 5-year housing land supply is an immediate problem that we've got that we're going to have to resolve. The South Warwickshire local plan is a plan through to 2050, and we need to make sure that the development within the South Warwickshire local plan is properly phased across the whole of that period. And so the word front loading, I think, is inappropriate, frankly, in relation to that plan.
What phrase would you use then instead of front loading, the Councillor Coucher?
Properly phased.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Councillor Keithley.
Yeah, just adding to what Councillor Coucher said is we're sort of almost conflating the two issues. And in fact, the 5-year housing land supply, that matters in terms of the policy that we adopt to granting permissions. So we still need the housing in the plan, but actually not being able to demonstrate our current position has changed our situation in respect of planning applications, granting or refusing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I think if the thousands of people who are watching this broadcast today, they are getting an explanation of the differences between the two. We've teased out the implications. We've teased out that sometimes we are comparing apples with pears, so therefore that we need to compare apples with apples or pears with pears, and it potentially answers the questions and concerns of our residents who've got some confusion about this. And I would say, I'm not 100% au fait on all the situations as well. So again, this is the reason why we brought this forward, and we're grateful for the portfolio holder's intervention and Mr. Perks' intervention, Joe's intervention as well, that the information is being teased out. So I think whilst there were some reservations while this has been forward, I definitely think it's been worthwhile, definitely from my point of view. I don't know what anybody else thinks there is, but I think that this was a worthwhile agenda, and thank everybody for their cooperation. Councillor Passingham, you can have the last word, please.
Seeing as it's agreed by, I think, all parties that housing should go on brownfield sites first because of the, cleaning up the pollution, the regeneration that it would bring to places like Coventry. Is there no way of sort of taking the idea of this motion forward in any way, do you think? Any process, existing planning process where we could say this is the wrong way to allocate the lands, the targets on greenfield sites without the infrastructure and all the rest of it, and Coventry needs investment and regeneration. Is there any way in the planning process that could?
Mr. Perks, want to come in, please?
Yeah, I think there are ways that we've recognised the preference for brownfield developments, and if you wanted to put a motion that suggested that the housing that we have to provide should be put on a brownfield site within our area, that would be a motion that perhaps would be worthy of debate. I think trying to suggest that because there's more brownfield in other parts of the country that we shouldn't have that allocation, I think that ship has probably sailed through the Headner, and we need to we as a district council are charged with providing that level of housing. How we do that is within our gift. To question that number, to be honest, previous experience has shown is out with our gift, and it'll just mean our plan fails at examination. So if you were to reframe the motion so it was focused on using brownfield land within our area, that may have more chance of succeeding.
Joe, one, please.
And yeah, just to confirm that, I mean, it is national policy. The NPPF requires us to have a brownfield first approach, and obviously we are embedding that within the local plan, that our approach for looking for sites is brownfield first approach. But obviously, as we all know, we have a limited amount of brownfield land. But yeah, that's very much the approach that we're looking through the local plan, and we're required to do that in national policy anyway.
That's going to say it's really interesting, Mr. Perks, the point about the brownfield sites and that how the motion may have been amended and probably had more success than. But that's the whole point of coming to scrutiny, so we do listen and learn and potentially amend things for the future. I've got Councillor Ballinger next, please.
Thank you. Regarding the five-year housing land supply, can you confirm how many councils have been affected by the government sort of planning changes?
I will just on this one question, because I raised a bit of five-year housing land supply as well. I'll let the Councillor Coucher or the officer answer on this one, but I think I've been advised that we're probably slightly going off topic, so thank you.
If you want a quick answer, it's over 50%.
Good. Councillor Coucher, I do appreciate quick answers, and thank you for that. Any other points on this? No, I think it was a good debate, and judging from what we've come out, what we've learned, and realising the difficulties behind this in the process, I think it was well worth having, and it will be reported back to Cabinet on Monday, our discussions about this. What I'm trying to do, we do need to speed on a bit. The next item we'll talk about, if you don't mind, again, it's Mr. Perks' electric vehicle infrastructure within off-street public car parks across South Warwickshire. Mr. Perks, would you like to come in, please?
Yeah, I'll give you a brief introduction to the report to stimulate the debate. The report is seeking to provide electrical vehicle charging to support residents in vehicles within the Stratford District Council car parks. We see the sort of value of providing this sort of infrastructure to sort of support our visitor network as they increase the uptake of electric vehicles and the viability of using them in line with the government's phasing out of petrol and diesel vehicles and the increased use of electric vehicles. We're looking to commission this jointly with Warwick District Council sort of on a South Warwickshire basis because we think a lot of it is related to the visitor economy. We're bringing this initiative forward now because a lot of the contractors that may be interested in sort of bidding for this work have previously been involved in the government-funded Levi project that looked at sort of providing on-street sort of charging facilities. That programme is coming to an end, so there's now some capacity in the market. We did look at doing this about sort of 18 months ago, but the feedback that we got from the soft market test was that all of the contractors were tied up with Levi work for that period of time, so it feels like the right time to move out. And what we're looking to do is put out a tender opportunity for commercial providers to facilitate this offer. The report sets out various ways that we could do it and why we've concluded that's the best way forward. There's now quite a significant industry out there providing this, and the report proposes that we offer a concessionary lease to one of the sort of providers who would come in and install and run and operate all of the infrastructure, so we don't have an ongoing maintenance liability for this, and that the expertise is sort of left in the hands of the experts really who provide this sort of facility nationwide. So we would invite a series of bids, and they would be evaluated on a combination of the income that it provided to the district council alongside the sort of level of coverage it provides. One of the risks you get with this, you get a lot of interest in sort of like the Stratford Leisure Centre, sort of the honeypot sites, but less in sort of the more remote sites. So we're going to devise an evaluation mechanism that sort of recognises, that gets as wide a coverage as we can at a reasonable level of income to the district. So that's an introductory summary. Happy to take any questions.
I'm glad to see you've got a cunning plan there, Mr. Perks. Who wants to come in on this? Councillor Rice, I know you mentioned in the previous item, one of the items about the hydropower and the impact and how we could use that hydropower. Oh, councillors, I have asked for the temperature to be increased. I can see one or two are shivering there, so I have asked... no, you're not the only one. I have asked the temperature to be increased, and I think it's hopefully going through now. Councillor Rice, would you want to come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with a tiny point of detail on page 107 of the Cabinet Papers. Sorry.
This mic needs to be in the right place, thank you.
Page 107 of the Cabinet Papers, a small amount of detail. It says under 1.2.4, concessionary lease, which is the preferred method of going forward, that it could be done on a small profit share, and yet 1.2.6 describes a flat lease payment, and I don't see how those two are compatible. But that's a point of detail. I think that for me, this report is all very well and fine, and it basically says there are a lot of electric vehicles, and a lot of them are visiting Stratford District, or are already in Stratford District, and probably need to charge at some point when they're in a car park. So far, so good. I think the critical thing, and something that I think should be brought before us in future, is exactly how these bids are going to be evaluated and what the criteria are. And it seems to me, on the face of it, I would say, that not necessarily one size fits all, that, and it's identified in the report that these charging points in central Stratford car parks are going to be far more lucrative than putting them in the far-flung car parks in Stratford District. So I think it's going to be critical that the criteria that are used for choosing which tenders go forward and on what basis should come back before us. But my question would be, I guess to Tony, is, and you mentioned, Tony, that criteria are being worked upon. I just wondered what those criteria will be, and who amongst the two councils will be judging those criteria. And I've also got another question, if I may. Under 1.2.10, the timeline of installation is heavily dependent on the electricity supply of individual car parks. And I do wonder how these commercial operators can come up with a reasonable tender if they do not already know about the electricity supply of individual car parks. And that's me done, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad I asked you to come in first on that one, Councillor Rice. Thank you.
Taking those in the order that you raised them then, I think that the first point, in paragraph 1.24 and 1.26, the terms ground rent and flat lease probably should have said the same thing. They should both have said ground rent. Basically what we're saying is we prefer to do it on a fixed ground rent rather than, sorry, I'm too far on the microphone, rather than a small profit share, so we've got more clarity about what we're doing, so we're recommending going for the fixed one on that. That was the easy question. The second question about the evaluation criteria, I think this will emerge sort of following the soft market test as part of the process. What we're not clear on at the moment is the level of appetite for sort of providing car park charging infrastructure within our car parks, and whether if we're fairly confident from the work we've done so far that our prime town centre car parks will be profitable, whether we would find a contractor who is prepared to install in sort of less profitable car parks for a sort of a lower rent effectively. We don't know what we're going to find yet. As the report stands at the moment, that recommendation 4 delegates the responsibility for sorting that conundrum to myself in consultation with the monitor from the sort of section 151 officer, because we felt it was sort of a technical matter. If we had a steer that we wanted as broad a coverage as we got there where we didn't lose money, that was the steer that we were taking, and we would work the detail of that out. If the Scrutiny Committee feel that's not appropriate, that's a matter that you could refer to the Cabinet if you wanted to. In terms of the electrical supply, it's my understanding of this, it's primarily a function of the sort of the local substations adjacent to the car park and the amount of sort of electricity they can produce and peak demand. One of the things that the potential providers would do would get that information from the network provider as to sort of when the level of current, I suppose, that they required would be available in those car parking spaces, car parking locations, and there is a period, as I understand it, a programme of upgrading the networks to sort of make sure that the power is available. So some will be available immediately, some will be sort of 2 years down the line, but it would be for the bidders to work out what they could deliver when, based on conversations with network suppliers.
Can you come back, Councillor Rice? I thought you might.
Yeah, no, just a point of detail. The impression I get from reading the report is that you're looking for one commercial operator to provide everything. It seems to me that it's far more likely that you would want perhaps 2 or even 3 with different criteria offering different levels of profit or cost. I don't know. I suppose the key question for me is whether it should be the local authorities that balance the profitability potential, or whether it should be the commercial operators, because it could well be that one particular commercial operator could offer a really good return for central Stratford, and that could be used by the authority to subsidise and perhaps, and certainly break even, more rural locations. Just for your comment, really.
Yeah, we're sort of mindful for that, and I honestly don't know, going back to your multiple suppliers question, what the right answer to that is. The option one is to sort of say, well, let's say you offered us £100 a space, to pick a number at random. If you only paid us £50, would you do one in somewhere less that doesn't make you any money with a single supplier? That would be one model that we're looking to test through this exercise. An alternative model would be a commercial provider at Stratford, and we take as much money as we can, we say £150 a space, and we'd reserve some of that money for a sort of more of a social contractor who would go to sort of the less profitable car parks. At the moment, I haven't got enough data to give a fixed view on that, but part of this tender exercise, to be honest, we've been wrestling with this very question for rather too long, in my opinion, at the moment, about do we go out, how do we put this out? I think we now need to go out and sort of see what the market offers us, and then based on that try and develop a detailed solution that gets sort of charging into the commercially attractive spaces and the less commercially attractive spaces. The one thing I am assured about is if there's money to be made, there'll be a contractor wanting to do it. So I think if there is potential in the wider car parks, I think that the market will provide something.
Thank you for that. Councillor Keithley, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for this. I mean, I welcome this, but I do think that the operators will be looking for sites which offer them good commercial returns, which is why these are already going into supermarkets where there's a high number of users. A quick point, I've had an electric car for 4 years, done an awful lot of miles, charged an awful lot of times. One of the things that I find quite frustrating is when you have to have individual apps to get access to charge points. And those that I favour are the sort of tap and go sites, and I don't know whether or not that's something that has been thought about, because when you have individual apps, you often have to preload your app with credit before you're allowed to charge your car. And what happens then is you might be somewhere that you're not normally, like a tourist, and you end up with a credit sat on the system for a long time that you can't get back. So I was going to ask that question, whether or not that's something you could consider.
It's certainly something we've thought about, and it's in the supporting report, and it's been part of the debate going forward. I think tap and go is the ideal way to go with it. However, the market aren't terribly keen on providing tap and go. A lot of them seem to want their own apps, presumably for the sort of reasons that you've described, that they've got your money and somebody else hasn't. So I think it is going to be a balance that if we tie ourselves too much down to tap and go, we might then get a less commercially viable return, be able to provide fewer charge points. And if we have multiple operators, we will end up with multiple apps. It's a lot of these plates spinning that we need to sort of get out there and see what we can do to try and settle on the most optimal solution. But that's definitely something that we're aware of.
For that, I've got Councillor Wally Huggins, Councillor Littleward, Councillor Ballinger. Anybody else? Councillor Rice? Everybody else has had a... we do value your inputs. Councillor Rolfe, you can come in before Councillor Rice. Okie dokie, that's not a problem. I've got out of my paperwork now. Right, Councillor Wyatt-Huggins, can you come in while I'm chuntering away, please? Thank you.
Right, can you please give me an idea? I'm looking at the figures on page number 146, and the estimated costs, for example. So, to cut to the chase then, as I would, what sort of financial burden is this project going to put on this council and our council taxpayers, please?
0.
Brilliant. Nice, succinct questions and nice, succinct answers. This is what I like to see. Councillor Littlewood, hopefully you'll be able to follow that trend.
I don't promise anything. No, I've got a slightly different question. I mean, I welcome this report. I think it's very helpful and very informative. My question, however, is that, well, the cheapest way of charging electric vehicles is home charging. And clearly, there is a problem with home charging if you live in urban centres. For example, like Old Town here, you cannot put your cable from your house to your car if you haven't got a driveway. Most of these places do not have driveways across a public pavement. Excuse me. But there are systems available which allow for safe pedestrian crossing with sunken arrangements with a conduit under which has got a rubber top to it, a hard rubber top to it, so the cables slide through. And I understand that grants are available. And it may be subject for a separate proposal, but I would have thought to encourage people who are going on relatively short journeys, which tend to be urban centres, that this would be a good way of encouraging the adoption of smaller EVs, which are ideal for home charging. Comments, really?
Yeah, I think all of those points are valid. There are 2 or 3 of those systems now that are becoming mature technology. The Levi scheme I talked about was designed to sort of encourage home charging and on-street charging infrastructure, which was a fund that was reserved for sort of highway authorities and effectively upper-tier authorities and unitaries. And those matters probably sit within that sphere rather than the sort of the public car park charging sphere, because they're really highways issues, but I think they're entirely valid and they will be part of the electric vehicle infrastructure solution. And that's been recognised by national government, and hopefully the highways authorities will pick that up.
Why would this district council, South Warwickshire, unitary, if it becomes that, not consider funding that themselves in some way?
If South Warwickshire unitary comes to pass, it will be very much something that's in its remit.
All right, I was going to say somebody's likely to plug that, aren't they, Councillor Littlewood, but obviously I wouldn't do that at all. Councillor Ballinger, please.
Thank you, Chair. As the ward member in Ulster West, and in Ulster in particular, we have very little in the way of electric car charging. I think we only have one public accessible one at the moment in the town. In Waitrose, they have unfortunately been stripped out for the metals inside. I think it's copper. So my question is where we're looking at siting these, are they going to be in a protected area whereby there's going to be, you know, security cameras and the units themselves kind of functional so people can't steal stuff?
Yeah, that's a valid point that we've spent a bit of time scratching our heads around, and plays right into a lot of the questions that have been raised here. One of them being sort of, do we own the batteries that come off the solar array, because they're quite stealable as well because they've got heavy metals in. How do we secure that? Where do you put them? If you go with the central Stratford car parks, one of the advantages of them, they're all covered by CCTV, and we've got relatively good coverage of that. As you move to more rural, remote locations, the chances of the equipment being stolen probably increases because there's less security if those two things correlate. It's a balance that will need to be struck, but you're right, there are valuable metals within these installations. Part of the reason that we've decided to propose the concessionary model is so that that risk would sit with the contractor, the installer, the operator, rather than with the district council, because we feel that they're better equipped with their infrastructure to replace and repair things and their buying power to sort of keep control of this. We can sort of give them sort of coverage with CCTV in the areas where we have it, but we felt that when we were looking at the own operate model, because we'd own a relatively small fleet of these chargers, we'd be in a poor position. That was one of the reasons we didn't recommend that, because we would be in a poor position to respond to this, because we'd have relatively little infrastructure for it. But it is a real issue. It's a risk that needs to be borne in mind.
Right, thank you. I've got Councillor Passingham, Councillor Iceland, Councillor Rolfe, and then I think we'll bring this to a close.
Yeah, I've had a EV car for quite a long time, and you do charge at home because it's a lot cheaper, but I see this as really being an advantage for tourism, because when we go away, you want to go somewhere really accessible that charges as quickly as possible, and so it's important for tourism. So that was the one point. The other one is, in Shipston, there's a couple of terrace streets which are already packed with cars that, as I understand it so far, Levi hasn't suggested any on-street car parking there, but they are quite close to the central car parks. So will residents be able to park all night? They'll want to do it. There's a sort of there's an issue about sort of hogging spaces in car parks, that residents will be taking up spaces for ordinary shopping, car parking, and the rest of it, which is in short supply in Shipston anyway.
No, that's yet another of the dilemmas that we need to resolve. We're looking at whether we introduce a sort of a 4-hour limit, because the same would apply for sort of visitors who stay and occupy a space all day that could be charging somebody else's car. There isn't a perfect solution to that, because you can restrict the time that people can park in it, and they'd have to move the car after that. Some people may think that's reasonable, some people may disagree. But that's one of the things that we'll have to sort of build into the off-street parking places order that sort of governs the extent of use. In the free car parks in Shipston, that's even more challenging, because we've got very little ability to get people to move cars, and I suppose we'd have to introduce some form of control in the off-street parking places order to sort of overstaying in an electric space became a ticketable offence, and we'd have to monitor it. But yes, it's when you get into these things, they're more complicated than initially seen.
Thank you for that. Councillor Rice, please.
Yeah, just a quickie, following up from Councillor Littlewood and Passingham. Are you thinking of giving preferential rates for local residents who are unable to charge at home?
There's nothing in this paper that proposes that.
Councillor Rolfe, please. Councillor Rolfe, please.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So Councillor Littlewood brought up Old Town. Old Town is a conservation area, and they don't like putting cables down across pavements in conservation area, which is why, and I go to what Councillor Passingham has just mentioned, your county councillor will know that there's a report just been published at the county, which is going to make some of the residents' parking spaces, I know it's controversial, some of the residents' parking spaces with EV charging points, and there are some in Old Town, and I think there's some in Shipston, and I think there's some in Henley proposed. The county are proposing that they become EV charging points only, which is less residents' parking spaces. Now, I mean, you may think that's fair, you may think it's unfair. I represent as a county councillor Old Town, and it's the biggest question, it's the question that's most asked of me regularly. In fact, I've had people saying I can't get an electric car because I cannot charge it unless those spaces, those 4 spaces become free, just for charging. It's very, very difficult, I know, and it isn't going to suit everyone. it is because Old Town, no one has garages, no one has parking spaces. It is all totally residence parking. I don't know what it's like in Shipston, and I don't know what it's like in Henley, but certainly in Old Town it is. What I wanted to ask, and that's why I wanted to be last, is that a few of us were speaking beforehand about this meeting, and we wondered if there was a method of, and this will involve Howard, of bullet pointing after each of these that we discussed that goes to Cabinet, bullet pointing the points that have come forward from us as a group, and just reading them out at the end of our discussion. In other words, Howard reading out what will go on the report for Councillor Crump to bring to Council. The reason we have discussed this and the reason we have asked this is because very often poor Howard doesn't have the time to produce something for Councillor Crump to speak until the weekend, and some of us don't look at our district council's emails till the weekend. And I just wondered whether it would be just something that you could do, like you have just taken notes of what we've discussed on EV charging, and you could literally go boom, 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 boom. That's what's going in the report. I'm just asking, would it help us, but would it help you? Thank you.
Thank you for those points, Councillor Rolfe. I think that I would need to liaise with officers and to see how we can best manage this. You know, you're right, Howard does a tremendous job providing a lot of in a short amount of time, and I genuinely believe, and I think Councillor Junior genuinely believes, that what we feed back is a fair and representative view. It might not completely encapsulate all our conversations, so I'm willing to accept that is the case, and if we can streamline and improve the amount of information we get in there in a reasonable way, I'm open to suggestions. So you shouldn't have come back.
And that's just to come back. That's why I'm asking this, because at the time, as we speak, it is fresh in everyone's minds. Yeah. It is then put down. I mean, by the time it comes to Monday, some of us have, had 5 nights sleep, or some not. And, it just would make it easier for us to understand what is likely to be said, because some of us won't have seen the report. Thank you.
Again, just playing devil's advocate, sometimes the bullet points might not necessarily encapsulate everything, and it might raise more questions than answers. So it is the fine line.
But it will give us chance as a committee to add to those bullet points. Or don't forget, Howard, we said this. I'm just saying that it might help us all. Thank you.
That's Keithy. Do you indicate, are you to disappear now? Thank you very much, and safe journey. Hope it all goes well. Yeah, I think we'll discuss this with the officers, and I think we'll speak to the leader of the council to see her view as well, which I think is fair. But like I say, I hope to see. I don't think this is any criticism of the information that Mr. Allison helps me produce, and Mesa and Tony and Mars. Sorry, the monitoring officer, Deputy Chief Executive, and Mr. Nash, it helps to produce. So yeah, thank you for that. But your points are noted. And my only other conclusion on this, a couple of things. Perhaps lots of good information. Sometimes we haven't got all the details, all the certainty about this, and Mr. Perks coming up with the criteria and negotiations with potential suppliers, it could be difficult. So whether those criteria and principles are firmed up in the future, whether you can come back with details of those. And I agree about the cables in places where you haven't got off-street parking, in terms of slips and trips, particularly people with disabilities or sight issues, they are a potential issue as well that we need to take into account. So it's not just the people who are being coming. Councillor Flaherty, please.
Thank you, Chair. In all this discussion about people coming using cars. What are we also doing about people cycling and coming into town to cycle into town and have safe places where they don't get, nicked and all the rest of it? I do think we don't do enough for cyclists.
Yeah, I think so. I wouldn't disagree with that, Councillor Floyd. This isn't part of the report with discussion, but whether it is a future item of how we encourage people to not use vehicles and giving safe and secure access for vehicles. I thought you were going to come in about electric bikes as well, so that might have been the way in on this one, but I think, again, that's a point for the future, and I think officers noticed that one. I think we'll move on. I think I'll give Mr. Perks a chance to rest his voice for a while. And the next item I'd like to bring in is delivering local needs and local choice for rural housing, which is on page 331 of the Cabinet pack.
I suspect you may need some of my dulcet tones again, although we have the portfolio holder and Sarah Brooke-Taylor here. I think we'll all acknowledge as a committee the importance that sort of enabling sort of local choice rural housing has made to the council's sort of housing stock delivery over the years. It's provided sort of valuable, affordable housing for local communities, often sort of some of our more rural communities. And for many years now, we've worked with Warwickshire Rural Community Council to provide this. Sarah Brooke-Taylor, who's joined us at the back of the room, not at the back, she's moved from the back of the room and joined us at the table, has been the person who's very ably sort of been promoting these schemes. The report, sort of, I was going to say fortunately or unfortunately, but neither. Sarah's contract or our agreement with Warwickshire Rural Community Council is coming to an end in March 2026. The report proposes that we renew that contract for a further 3 years to give us a seamless delivery of the schemes that are sort of going forward to support this sort of valuable initiative. I think that's the top and bottom of it. It sets out some of the report, you've read it yourself, I'm sure, sets out some of the successes that we've enjoyed. I'm sure Sarah will advocate for what a fine job she does. And I would support that, but we're suggesting that the funding is made available slightly in advance of the budget cycle so that Sarah has security, because otherwise we waited to the budget, that wouldn't go through till sort of February, and then by March it's we're out of time. We feel this is an important initiative. It complies with the council plan and our corporate objectives going forward. It supports the South Warwickshire local plan and the current local plan. It seemed to tick a lot of our boxes, and we're proposing bringing that forward.
And so, yeah, I'm totally supportive of the details in the report, and particularly in terms of security for Sarah's post and long term. Because obviously in terms of the budget, personally, I think it's a valuable post and adds value to the organisation and to our local rural community, as it says on the report. I think what I would like to add is that I'd like to hear about the challenges that you're coming. Obviously, the resources, we've touched on several times today about the resources to do the job. I just wonder what your concerns were really about that and how we can potentially overcome some of those challenges. Yes, Councillor Warren Huggins, please.
Yeah, I've just looked at the dates on this page, and forgive me for not doing this earlier. I'm looking at page 333, and the dates there 2005 to 2006. I believe that one of the developments here was actually land that my husband, who was not my husband at the time, sold, and 2 of the properties here listed were as part of that planning permission for the rural housing programme. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll note it. I think you're erring on the side of caution. I don't think there's any issue at all with that, but thank you so we can notice. Thank you. Who wants to carry? Do you want to come in, Sarah, please, or who wants to come in on my rambling question again?
Sorry, if you could repeat the question, Chair.
Obviously wondered about resources available. Yeah, obviously there's challenges of delivering all these items, and what's the biggest challenge and how do you overcome them? And what's the thing you really feel most proud about the schemes that that we're doing and we're going to do in the future?
Well, in terms of challenges, the site allocations plan, the emerging South Warwickshire local plan, we have had issues with landowners around both of those plans. A lot of the communities, as well as the landowners themselves, are looking to wait and see what's happening with the South Warwickshire local plan before they wish to actually progress further. Landowners, if they've got land put forward into the site allocations plan or South Warwickshire local plan, obviously they've got a hope value there. Joe talked earlier about the work that's ongoing with South Warwickshire local plan. For those sites that are not chosen to go forward, I'm hoping that we may well have an opportunity to work with parishes and work with the landowners to actually turn those into opportunities for the rural communities. Some of the communities are concerned that a few homes will turn into many more homes. So that's something that we work with them, continuous consultation with all of these parishes that we're working with, not just the parish councillors, but ongoing work with the communities themselves, with those individuals. And in terms of successes, well, we currently have 2 sites that have permission. I'm waiting for, unfortunately, we've got 1 or 2 legal issues. So that's Broome and Claverdon that we're particularly waiting and hoping to have start on sites next year. 2 more schemes, all local needs, of course. 2 more schemes, one in particular in Earlswood, and that's come about as a result of land that was identified through their neighbourhood development plan. So lots of work, as indicated in the report that's gone on previously, and lots of work forthcoming as well.
So that's very helpful, and it's, I can understand the struggles that you're trying to get through, and you do something and then it generates something else as well, so it's not as easy. Definitely. Councillor Johnston, please.
I've used this service on 2 occasions, once in Ashorn and once in Wellesbourne. It's, I think, really effective, and I would hope that we will be able to recommend to the Cabinet that the recommendations here are endorsed and taken forward.
Yeah, looking for seconds. You're happy to second that, Councillor Alcock?
Yes, very happy to second that.
Thank you. Right. This is, like I say, is very positive report. And I think we emphasise the need to Cabinet the importance of this service that we provide. So I think that is particularly pertinent. Councillor Wiley-Huggins, please.
Yeah, I think Sarah Brooke-Taylor's team that she represents is exceptional. I've known Sarah come out to very cold village halls, even colder than this this council chamber actually, and has been amazing. The way that she speaks to the parish councils, to people who've come, and also I've also seen Sarah when we've both been facing a barrage of perhaps less than pleasant speakers as well, and she does it with a cool, calm and collected manner, and to that I applaud her. But I do have one question here. When we look at page 333, can you tell me of those rural homes that were built in 2005, 2006, which ones of those, and I know this now stopped from happening, how many of those are still on the books for rural housing needs? And these are not all just, some of these are rented, aren't they? So how many of these are still in if you like, houses that we can still allocate if they become vacant, or have they all been bought by owners, please?
So I wouldn't be able to give you that exact breakdown of which are rent shared ownership or have been for purchase. The point is that they are all about local needs. So regardless of the tenure, they all stay within that local community for the benefit of those local households. And that is the crux of this work. The Rural Housing Enabler role is specifically working with communities for homes that are about local connection prioritised always to those local parishes.
Thank you.
Councillor Rice, then Councillor Passingham.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, I'd like to endorse the comments made by Councillor Wally Hoggins. What I'm curious about is the amount of money. I was surprised at its size. It doesn't seem very much, and I just wondered if this is a proportion of the cost that's involved, or are we paying for the whole service?
Thanks, Chair.
Yes, just to confirm, so that is for the whole service, so that is the amount of money that we would pay the WRCC for the service of Sarah's role. So it includes, you know, that's everything per annum.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Councillor Passingham.
Yeah, there's a group in Shipston that are very keen on community land trusts, and I've mentioned this before. There's a lot of applications for new housing around Shipston. I was just wondering, is there any way of saying to developers, instead of using a social housing provider like Orbit, who's not got a very good reputation in Shipston, that for the social housing, a community land trust is advised or encouraged? Is that within the sort of remit?
Yeah, I'm coming on that. I mean, yeah, I mean, any RP can kind of bid for schemes through Section 106 kind of negotiations and site. I mean, Sarah probably can advise better than me, but I think they only look at like smaller scale sites rather than larger sites, which are more like the Orbits and the other kind of RPs. I think your organisation focuses more on the smaller scale schemes. Is that right?
Indeed. So, yes, the work of the Rural Housing Enabler is with those rural communities for small-scale schemes. And this, over the years, has averaged, and we work with about 9 homes being small-scale. Obviously, it depends upon the size of the community themselves as well, so always proportionate to that. But the sorts of schemes that you're looking at coming forward in Shipston, they're larger schemes, so it isn't something that we would necessarily get involved with, but as the Rural Housing Enabler, I will work with all communities to advise around affordable homes, and if advice was needed in terms of community land trusts, then I could provide that as well. But as Joe's pointed out, the RPs that actually work on these local needs schemes, it's about the small size of them and, of course, the support of the community.
Yeah, I think that point about the support of the community is vital, and that's almost like the unique selling point, isn't it, on this one? So I think that's really important. Councillor Wally Hoggins, please.
Yes, we've touched earlier on in the meeting about the loss of the 5-year housing land supply. Can you tell me, does that make your life potentially slightly easier, please? Thank you. In finding sites that might be better at coming forward now. Thank you. I was actually going to email you about this anyway, but there we go.
I'm hoping it's not going to make a huge amount of difference because the larger sites were never going to come forwards. Rural exception sites are what we are working around, these smaller sites. So where somebody has a larger site, I think they will have always had an eye on general development, and I think the lack of the 5-year housing land supply actually will just be encouraging those who would have been waiting with their larger sites. So I am hoping that aspect of it won't have too much of an impact. Having said that, where somebody has a large site and we may have gone in asking just for a corner, just for an acre, that could have an impact, but I have a sort of steady stream of smaller sites coming forwards that I hope will continue. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Littlewood, please.
Thank you, Chair. I too have had the pleasure of working with Sarah on a number of occasions, and I endorse what's been said about the professionalism that's involved. The really important, one of the starting point for many parishes is the local housing needs survey, which, as we go into the next few years without a 5-year housing land supply, is quite an important and material piece of information for planning considerations. And I think that two things come out of it. I'm pleased that we're continuing, or should be continuing, to support the role, which is very, very important beyond what we've said here, really, I think, for rural communities particularly. But also, I think that the message should go out through the parish forum, perhaps, to parish councillors. It may be even a direct mail to them that says that they need to be cognizant of the fact that housing needs locally do change, and 5 years is really the lifetime of a housing needs survey, and without many of them, I do know, looking at the lists, are coming, have gone over that time period and need to be renewed. We need to be encouraging this service, and I know that's not quite what we're debating here, but I think that that we should encourage and support it completely.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Wood. I think those points are noted. I've got Councillor Rolfe next, please.
Yes. Hello, Sarah. I've not had the pleasure of meeting you because I don't represent a rural area, and I represent Stratford. And I just really a comment about local need, because obviously in the urban areas, and particularly Stratford, there is a local need. And unfortunately for people that live in Stratford, they can't afford to live in Stratford. So going back to what you deal with in the kind of rural areas, are they also affordable housing? In terms, so if houses are built, I mean, very often in these gorgeous, lovely villages, there are huge mansions.
Yeah.
But so are they affordable, and is that part of the deal, if you like?
Indeed, as you put it, it is part of the deal. Rather long-windedly, we refer to them as rural, affordable, local needs homes. So yes, it is always about the affordability, whether that is the rent or shared ownership or homes to purchase. So not only about the local connection side of things, but it is about the affordability. And you're correct, it's not just in the urban, it is in the rural as well, where we see these affordability problems.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. I think we'll draw this to a close now. And I can attest, sitting in a parish council meeting, chattering with Sarah, not chattering in a disrespectful way. It was that cold. Our teeth were chattering, so it was very difficult to concentrate. We're not quite at this level, and thank you for your wonderful updates, and we do value the service that you provide, and I know the people living in rural areas do particularly, and the fact that you work with communities and parish councils as well to try and get the best outcome. So thank you very much, and thank you. You're free to go. Before we move on to the next item, we're going to have to do what seems to become quite common, that we're approaching the 3 hours. Are members willing to agree that we carry on past the 3 hours? All those in favour? Councillor Rolfe?
I know that Councillor Alcock and I have an engagement which we have to be at. We have to be at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
If it doesn't get any warmer, I'm really disinclined to stay any longer, frankly. So I would vote against staying longer unless it gets warmer, unless we have another break with some hot chocolate that works. Thank you.
I can go and get the...
I've spoken to premises to turn it.
Yeah. So why haven't they done it?
Yeah.
Do I need to go and follow it?
I'll get Mr. Perks to...
I can't be here and there at the same time,
but
though, is the problem.
I'm sure Mr. Nash will hold the fort if anything's needed. Or
Well,
if
I've
we...
got to present you the next two items. Unless you do, but you could do performance with Simon.
We've got a cunning plan to some of the performance monitoring. And if you could give me a partial agreement to carry on
down to the basement and just
beyond 3 hours, and then yeah, we've got till 4 minutes past 1. If it becomes too cold and we have to, but in the meantime we'll carry on. And Mr. Purfield, 1:45 performance monitoring reports. Yeah, back in the chair again. So if you'd just like to give us a brief resume of what's happening and your highlights, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I will be brief. It's the Q2 performance monitoring report for April to September. As you can see in the report, the council plan actions, there are still a lot that won't be in this period, so they're mainly end of year. In fact, there were 4 achieved. And,
do you need to just... I do apologise for Councillor Rolfe's unusual interruption of your... I suppose it was almost as bad as the Great Escape ringtone as well. So, Mr. Purfield, on behalf of Councillor Rolfe, I do apologise for your interruption. Please carry on.
Okay. Yeah, as I said, there were 4 achieved and 4 not achieved. There were some achievements around the Indigo transport system, the Warms Home Grants and the Pledge on Migrant schemes. There were 4 not achieved around the customer access terminals. It's in the area, not area offices, but the areas where they are. The district portal, about the hydroelectric turbines I know you've been talking about, and solar panels. And then regarding the key performance indicators, of which there are 25 that are monitored in this period, 18 of those were reached target and 7 hadn't reached target. Of the 7 that didn't reach target, 2 regarded Home Choice Plus, which I know you're all aware of is being worked on a lot at the moment. So that's just reporting the situation. We just missed the major planning application target, but that's quite a stretch target anyway. Recycling, food inspections, again, that was just missed. And council tax collection invoices paid. As ever, it's just open to the floor now for any comments, please.
Thank you. Welcome back, Councillor Rolfe. And thank you. It did lighten the meeting. So, no, I have apologised to Mr. Purfield on your behalf, and he graciously accepted it. So thank you for that. Who wants to come in, or do you want me to open the bat in on this one, and then councillors come in on this one? Yeah, one of the ones that you have touched on, some of those, Simon, page 195, the customer access terminals, one of which is in Southam. We have had 12 months data, and for 1 and 4, I just wondered why it says in order to have more comprehensive information available. I just wonder how long we'll be going on for, just on that one to start off with. Mr. Perkstone, do you want to come on?
Yeah, it's not so much a problem as supplying the customer access terminals. We have plenty of them, but it's having people who want them. I do wonder if this ship has sailed and the world's moved on. We have one in Southam, we have one in Ulster that's apparently put in some place you can't get to unless you're sort of particularly dexterous. So personally, I think this is a target we probably need to review in the new year as to whether it's actually required.
Yeah, to be honest, and I don't want to say I told you so, but I did express concerns, exactly the same concern you were saying about the ship moving on, whilst the principle behind it was commendable. I did think the technology, and as we've moved on, particularly after what we got used to during COVID and etc., I felt that it wasn't particularly the best way of spending the council's money, and I'm glad to see that this is going to be reviewed in the new year, so thank you for that. Councillor Wally-Hoggins.
Yeah, just a couple of points that I'd like some more details on, please. I note that we're well under the performance target for the percentage of council tax collected. That's me looking at page 214. I think if you pay monthly, you pay on 10 instalments a year. What does it mean? What are the additional number of taxpayers now paying 12 monthly instalments? And do we need to recalculate how that's being achieved? Also, I'd also like to know, we look at the appeals on page 211, major planning applications, percentage of major applications overturned at appeal. The target was 2% and we're now over 3%, which is small numbers, but how many houses does that mean we're actually going to be built instead? What's been overturned? Thank you. But I do think the council tax one is pertinent. Thank you.
I'll answer the council tax ones. I'm still trying to look at exactly what the other one says.
Sure, it's to do with the amount that's collected each month, but
Yeah, no, the council tax one, yeah, well, as a management team, we raised exactly the same point when we looked at these figures a couple of weeks ago. We've asked Hannah Buckley to sort of reprofile that and give us some more detail about have we got an actual concern here, what are we doing about collection, and we're getting a report on that. So I would be happy to bring some further detail back to you in the not too distant future about that, because it's an issue we're looking at, but we've asked Hannah to do that, so she's on it. The planning appeals one, yeah. Yeah, these are the applications we've had overturned on appeal. So your concern was that was above target. Would you like some more detail to sit behind that?
You might get that. Yeah, okay, Councillor.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Can you take a note of that, Howard? And we'll get back to you. I'll get Richard Gardner to update.
Brilliant. I noticed one of the items not achieved we've spoken about was on page 198 about the turbines. So I've got no issues with that. I think that has been answered. One of the points was to increase sustainable energy generations with the solar panels at Southall and Studley. Obviously, I've just wondered about, it says they're currently in the technical design phase. It'd just be interesting whether it will be achieved in the financial year for 25-26.
I'm fairly confident Studley will be, because that one's sort of going on better. We have some issues with gaining access for a compound at Southern without boring with too much technical detail, because we have a complication with the school car parking and the leisure centre, so we may need to deliver that one over the school holidays in 2026. That by way of an update, but that's where we are with it.
Well, we've now come to almost 3 hours of the meeting, and I seem to feel a bit of an increase in temperature. I'm going to have to undo my tie in a minute. It's that one. Are councillors happy that? I know that. All those in favour? Yes, we'll just cover this item and then we'll have one.
Was everybody in agreement?
So are we all in agreement, or the majority? Yeah, thank you. Reluctant majority. Reluctant agreement. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, on the puppets. Councillor Rolfe, please.
Yes, Simon. On the percentage of council tax collected, I'm really confused about the additional number of taxpayers paying 12 monthly instalments, not 10. I didn't think. How does that happen? Paying 12 monthly instalments. Do you get a choice then?
I think it was an initiative we brought in as part of the cost of living measures. We used to traditionally sort of pay in 10 instalments, but for those who can't manage that, we would sooner that they paid in 12 instalments, rather than get themselves into arrears and us start chasing them and sort of putting pressure on them. So we do accept payments over 12 months sort of on request if there's a need for it.
Okay, thank you.
You okay with that, Councillor Rolfe? Yeah. Any other questions? I've got one comment. Obviously, I was slightly cynical about the computer access terminals, and that I've made that point. But I would like to congratulate officers on page 195 CP2A, the screening programme. That certainly I've received very positive feedback from my residents. Yes, I would like to pass on my congratulations. So I'll give it out with one hand, but take it back on another. So on the fair view. Hopefully, Mr. Birks, you can pass that on to all those involved in that process. Brilliant. And again, I think Councillor Keithley, his efforts on this as well should be noted as well in his absence. So I think that's fair. Thank you. Members happy with that, aren't they? Questions? No. Councillor Rolfe has proposed a 5-minute, 10-minute comfort break so we can get... You said about... Councillor Littlewood, and I know Councillor Rolfe mentioned something about a hot chocolate to warm up, so I was... Yeah. So I'm more than happy if we propose comfort break till 1:15. We will definitely be starting at 1:15 by this machine, so thank you. Yeah, thank you. Right, thank you everybody. I said we'd start at 13:15. It's just flicked over, so thank you very much. Next item, well, now Mr. Perks had a slight soothing of his throat, and I'd like to bring in on the delivery of the Climate Action Change Adaptation Audit Programme. So I have to read that twice because it all rolled into one. Mr. Perks, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, by way of introduction to the report, this report stems from the Climate Change and Nature strategy that the Council adopted last year. Much of the work that we've done under that initiative so far is focused on mitigation with sort of work on solar panels, carbon reduction, taking CO2 out of the atmosphere. One of the other work streams that was identified in that was adaptation to adapt to the inevitable effects of climate change. That's a work stream that we've made less progress on. So this proposal starts work on that. It's not looking at sort of CO2 mitigation, it's looking at issues like sort of flooding, overheating, soil erosion, things that can reduce the impact of climate change on the population. And what this paper proposes, in line with sort of what we set out in the strategy, is an opportunity for towns and parish councils, sort of community and organised groups and businesses to bid for some sort of funding to carry out an audit of their operations to sort of see what they could do to mitigate the impact of climate change. The idea is that we would get a mix of projects that we could use as case studies so that we could take that forward and we could sort of publish that and sort of say if you're a business suffering with overheating, if you're, I don't know what I'm going to get in terms of the bids, that in terms of flooding, sort of what precautions you can take at property level. It's a bit relatively small scale interventions that would allow people to be more secure in the climate in which we live. The fund that is bid for is 150,000, which would come from the Climate Change Reserve that we've got earmarked. That would be split into two tranches. 35,000 would cover the audits because we feel that would be sufficient money to get a reasonable range of properties, so as we get a reasonable range of case studies. And the further funding would be to, if we decided we want to take any of those forward as case studies into a delivered state, that would fund some of the works on there, either as part or whole of it. We'd probably look for match funding from the businesses or the community groups based on their ability to pay, so that we could sort of look at what was possible and then deliver it and prototype it, so as the idea it could be picked up elsewhere to make us more resilient to climate change. Any questions?
Brilliant, thank you for that, Tony. That was very helpful. Did you indicate there, Councillor Passingham?
Can I ask a quick one? So, just to be clear, most of the funding then will go to fund projects in the community to do with adaptation. So it could be tree planting or I turned it back on at the wrong time, didn't I? Yeah, so most of the fund, so £35,000 will go to the feasibility to an audit, and the rest of it will go to funding actual projects.
Yes, that's correct.
Brilliant. Councillor Wally-Hoggins, please.
Yes, I wonder if little priority maps will be provided for this as to where you want to spend the money, really. I'm thinking about the community grants that we got another load of maps yesterday of where priority areas are. I think we just need to be honest, really, as to what areas are going to be. 150,000 doesn't stretch very far, and therefore does this council really, I was a bit shocked by the maps yesterday, does this council really have priority areas that this is actually going to be allocated to? Thank you.
Yeah, at the moment, like the Community Climate Change Fund, it would be open to all areas within the district. What I could do is we've got Sue Green on, who's the sort of parish liaison officer. I could certainly make sure that she's promoting it sort of widely throughout the district, as I'm going to get her to promote the Community Climate Change Fund. We haven't identified any priority areas, so we're accepting bids from wherever they come, but I'll get that promoted.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to add on to that as well. It's it'll be interesting to see how we are going to promote it, and you touched on about Sue Green also. I think that's positive. Hopefully we'll potentially involve Walken, like say the Parish Partnership, Parish Forum. That would be good. And whether some of our partners would be able to whether Acton Energy maybe, or somebody like that will be able to pass on details as well. I think that would be helpful, so we get maximum publicity and maximum coverage throughout the district. So hopefully there are helpful suggestions. Councillor Rolfe, please.
Yeah, I'm rather hoping some of this money might go to some of our churches that are suffering so badly with their heating costs. And perhaps we can be a little bit kinder to our churches because they're struggling with planning permission to put PVs on their churches. But it would be, I'm certainly going to tell my two churches that this is available, and I hope that it will be looked on favourably. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't see any reason 1.52 sets out the organisations that can express interest. I don't see why churches couldn't apply. That would be fine.
If I may just follow up, though, that some of us have had churches that have applied for planning permission to put PVs on, and it's simply, you know, conservation area, sorry, you can't have. But, you know, at some stage, I think as a district, we need to look kindly on these churches, because otherwise they will actually stop providing a service. I mean, already my local church is no longer doing any morning services during the winter because it's too cold for them to go there. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, okay, that probably falls slightly outside of this, but we can take that up with I can take that up with the planners.
Yeah, I think that's at some points, and whether there might be, they might say no on something, or I might come up with an alternative suggestion that doesn't impact on the conservation area, but may help with their heating and insulation costs. So perhaps that might be another comment we could pass on. Councillor Wally-Hoggins, then Councillor Ballon.
Yeah, just in response to Councillor Ruff, and I know this is off piece slightly, but we have had some new central heating put into Brailes Parish Church, which is an absolute beauty, I must admit. But what I will say this is there has to be caution about central heating in churches, because it can actually deteriorate with the heating. They were never built to have sort of central heating in them, and actual central heating can actually cause their demise and decline very rapidly, and we need to be mindful of that. Thank you.
Brilliant. Councillor Ballinger, please.
Just to go off the back of what Councillor Rolfe was saying, you know, a lot of our churches are in conservation areas, and I think what would probably be helpful is if churches are looking to potentially implement solar panels, could we? I know, and this is a bit of a piece of work I'm asking here, and you know, forgive me, but could it be that churches within the district kind of have a clear understanding of what would be associated within the area they are in? So, for example, in Ulster, St Nicholas Church is in the conservation area, but some people might not know that. I just kind of want to kind of just make it easier for churches if they are wanting to look at solar panels. They have a clear understanding what they're in terms of conservation areas, etc. Potentially, churches are all in the conservation areas, but you know, that's by the by. So, just thought I'll ask.
Yeah, a lot of churches, particularly the more traditional ones, are listed as well, so that there are restrictions on them. I think it's a topic in and of itself, which is probably slightly outside of this paper, that we could perhaps look at some other time.
Thank you. Councillor Littlewood, please.
Well, I listened to what Mr Perks has just said, and I agree, but I'd like a final comment that the issue is not necessarily with planning department and planning committee for solar panels on churches, and as I said, they're listed buildings, but it's also with English Heritage, who seem to refuse without any logic at all. In my opinion, listed building or in the conservation area, if solar panels are on the roof of most churches, they can't be seen from the ground anyway. I suppose if you're in the air, you can see it, but also there's an added benefit: it stops the lead being nicked.
correct, but I think it's a conversation for another time. I think we ought to look at it very, very closely. I agree with you.
Right, any more points on that? I think, you know, again, some relevant points, and how we can work with organisations, be it churches or anywhere else that are affected by planning rules to ensure that we can make them as energy efficient and energy efficient really is helpful and reduce their overall costs to make them more viable and provide more services as well. Councillor Rolfe, please.
It's a bit warm in here.
In answer to that, is that somebody's phone ringing? Right then. Right, we'll move swiftly on. I'm glad to see you're joining in the spirit of bins are getting towards Christmas. I think that is really helpful. Got some points there, haven't we, on that one? Right, brilliant. The next one we are going to be looking at is, have we got one more? We've done everyone. Yeah, so we've covered all 5 now of the cabinet. We'll now go on to the update on devolution and local government organisation. Mr. Perks.
Regrettably, you have me again for this. Apologies. Well, since we last met, the proposed submission to the government on the local government reorganisation has been to council and has been approved. The decision of council was to support 2 unitaries, as you're all aware, because you were there. What we've been doing since then is working on the presentation of that submission. And the document has sort of now moved on to the point where today, in fact, it might even have been submitted. It was due to be submitted to the government this morning. In line with the recommendations from council, we've updated the formatting of the document, which we were always intending to do to make it sort of a little bit more punchy and easier to read. So that's been sort of fully desktop published. There's been a sort of what the Americans would call an elevator pitch added to the front, sort of setting out the reasons why you should be sort of looking at 2 unitaries. And that is either on, it's been added with the covering letter, and that's either on its way or shortly will be to the Minister. It ended up being supported by the 4 districts and boroughs within Warwickshire, but not Rugby. And it was also supported by letters from both of the Stratford MPs. We've got a letter from Sir Jeremy Wright and from Manuela Portugela supporting it from our area. And Richard Parker, as the Combined Authority Mayor, also supported the 2 unitary proposal, so it's going in backed by that. So the next stages will be a government consultation. The next stage, the government will assess the bids and see whether they meet the criteria. Assuming that both the single and the 2 unitary bid sort of meet the government's criteria, there will be a consultation on that run by the government in the early part of next year. I think, as David advised in a previous briefing, we're expected that to conclude before the purdah periods for the local elections. So that would be, are they in May, I think? So not here, but there are in other parts of Warwickshire, yeah. So we're expecting it to be done, yeah, in April, which will guide where we go next. So in terms of what we will be doing next, we are starting to sort of put together work streams that suit sort of either outcome so that we're not wasting the time. We're expecting a decision sort of in the summer as to sort of which proposal the government is going to take forward. And we're going to use the window in between now and then to sort of do work that will be needed to be done in either instance. I think that's probably as much of an update as I have for today, unless anyone has any questions.
Councillor Rice, then Councillor Bassingham, please.
Yes, just a quick one, Tony. Were there any changes made by the other 3 boroughs and districts, or district?
Nothing has substantially changed in it since the submission that you saw. That there's a bit of reordering and the conclusions have moved slightly from the front to the back. So as the document reads better, but the substance of the document, there were a few corrections as well, because some of the text boxes didn't quite match the text. We spent a lot of time refining that, but the key messages are unchanged from what you saw at Council.
Councillor Passingham, please.
Are there any implications of Richard Parker supporting the 2 unitary bid in terms of if there's support of the combined authority, does that help it? Or what would their reason be for supporting the bid, do you think?
I must be careful not to get into political speculation here.
Go on, go on.
Well, as is your right as an elected member, Councillor Wally Huggins.
I'll give you some leeway on this one, Mr. Perks.
I think that if one is supportive of the two-unitary proposal, I think that the support of Richard Parker is positive. He is a Labour politician of some significance, so you would think he would have some influence with the government. As the reason as to why he's chosen to support it, you could take the view that he thinks it's an excellent proposal, or you could think that it would be in the interest of the combined authority to have two unitaries in Warwickshire. I would think it would fall into one of those two categories.
Yeah, thank you. Is this the Richard Parker that didn't want Warwickshire to join the combined authority, or is that a different one? Oh, interesting. Funny that, isn't it? Yeah. Right, Councillor Ballinger, get me out of the hole, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of the executive summary, has that got, obviously after the feedback from council meeting, our last council meeting, has that become stronger, should we say, from the feedback?
Yeah, what I referred to as the elevator pitch has been sort of put in as almost like the executive summary, so that there's now like a set of punchy headlines, read on and you'll find out more in the sort of type attitude. So yes, the actual executive summary has been reformatted, but is essentially the same, but ahead of that has been a much more concise, punchy piece of work that was, I think, reflected the council's feedback.
Councillor Wally Huggins, did I? Councillor Rice, please.
Can you comment on Rugby's submission? Is it similar to ours but with a different conclusion, or what exactly? Are you able to say?
It's on BBC News, is it? Oh, well, the answer's on BBC News. My understanding of Rugby is they were going to look at the county single unitary proposal and they were going to look at the two unitary proposal, and somehow, I presume, make a submission based on the one they preferred. My understanding is they prefer the single unitary proposal, but as to how that they will submit to that effect, I don't know, to be honest, but it may be on BBC News.
And I think Mr. Firk's got to say that Rugby picked up the ball and ran with it. Oh, come on.
No, he didn't.
No, he didn't. Yes, right. And on that note, any other comments, questions? I always like to end the debate on a high there. Right, task and finish group, privately managed open spaces flood alleviation schemes. We've just had an interim report that has been distributed, and also some information back from the two MPs. Councillor Johnston, would you like to come in on this one, please?
Given the time, I don't want to add very much. I'd like to thank all the officers involved in supporting the working group. I think it's something in the order of 9 we had at one of our meetings. And I think quite a large amount of the initial remit has been concluded. The main activity we want to add, as we've said before, is the work of Mr. Purfield in carrying out surveys of residents and of parish councils. We're hoping that will be available in December, the analysis of that. There is going to be a challenge in the new year because quite a number of groups and resident groups want to come and talk to us. And if we stick to a timescale in February, I think, of concluding, we're going to have to organise that in some way or another, and I guess I need to talk to Mr. Allison about how we do that and how we organise ourselves. But other than that, it's an interim report. It'll be coming to the council asking for an extension, and I hope you'll be able to support that.
Yeah, Mr. Nash, please come in.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just a quick update though. So the group's objectives were set out in 1.4 of the report. Then the works completed so far by the group are set out in 1.5. As part of the work, parish and resident surveys are currently in consultation until the 5th of December. This is confirmed in 1.6 of the report, and that's one of the main reasons for the extension request. And I do believe we've got quite a few responses come through, Howard. Yeah. So that's good to see, and it will take us a while to actually go through all those. And 1.7 of the report confirms the work still to be undertaken by the group. So, Chair, the options, there's 3 options. So if you choose 2.1, so we'll have the final report in March 26. If it's option 2.2, then it's whatever the date OSC requests. And if you choose 2.3, basically the report will have to be undertaken by January 2026, because that is the next OSC meeting. So the recommendation is set out in the report, Chair.
Thank you for that, Mister. I think that's quite clear, yeah. You know, I don't want to say I told you so, but I know, well, I've got to say it. It would be hypocritical if I didn't say it. But I mentioned at the time this was a big task area of work, and I always felt the 3 months timescale was unrealistic and suggested an interim report with a final report some months later in the new year. This is now what transpires is happening, and this is no a criticism of officers. I just felt that we had to be more realistic and pragmatic, and as Chair of Scrutiny, you know, I felt that was my duty to point it out, having also worked in local government for many years. So whilst I appreciate that this is now coming to pass, I certainly think that we do need to be mindful of, as I said at the time, the workload on officers when we've got a shortened time scale, and also when you dig into something, it can lead us to go into different areas. So there should be some form of contingency built into that. So it's no criticism of officers, but I've just felt the original timescale was optimistic, and I'll just have that as point of on record. Councillor Rolfe, I can see you want to come in.
If I may, can I...
Councillor Coles, please.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
If I may just suggest that the final report is seen on the last ONS before the new municipal year, so sometime in April. Is that feasible? That gives another 2.5 months. So that it's done and dusted before the new municipal year.
Yeah.
I think it needs longer than March.
So just to clarify, so the recommendation in the report is for an extension of roughly 3 months to take us to the March meeting, 4th of March meeting. So, Councillor Rolfe, are you proposing that the OSC alters that recommendation to Council to say, actually, that it reports to the Task and Finish Group should report to the 8th of April meeting instead?
That's exactly what I would say. That gives us that 1 extra month. We has, as Councillor Johnston said, we've got a lot of residents to meet, a lot of residents groups to meet, and we cannot fit them in the time. And it's going to take at least 2 sessions to do that, at least. So I would propose that we go to the 8th of April. That's what I would recommend.
So that'd be option 2.2.
Yeah, so I assume you'll be, is that a seconding of the proposal?
Yes, I'll second that proposal. Thank you.
And we can alter paragraph 2.2 to, was it 2.2? To know,
Different extension of time.
yeah, to promote.
This is a recommendation to Council.
Yeah, this is our recommendation to Council that we propose a different extension of time to the Task and Finish Group. So that's covered, and that. So all those in favour?
So are we going for the April one?
So we're definitely clear. Just, I'm sorry, I've asked you to, just so we're clear, and I think I was, but I just want to clarify that we're agreeing to go for the meeting on the 8th of April 2026.
Sorry, will that be the final report?
That'll be the OSC final report.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just changing recommendation 2 basically to its final report to the overview and scrutiny meeting to be held on the 8th of April 2026.
And I think, to be fair, Chair, there's a lot going on. We're just about to discuss the budget report, which is going to take up most of some people from here. You know, we can't, it's the same people on the same groups, and I think it's fair on the officers. I mean, Howard's got, you know, enough to deal with, so I'm glad that everybody's agreed with
Councillor
that.
Rolfe,
Thank
you're
you.
just repeating some of the things that I said earlier, and I totally agree with your comments there. Thank you. Not very often, but I totally agree with you on that one.
So we are happy with the 8th of April.
So we're all happy on the 8th of April. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's fine. The next one is the task and finish budget group for 2027. To agree in the membership of the budget task and finish group. Who's indicated? Councillor Locke, I think you indicated first.
Yes, because I'm super fast. Yes, I'll put my name forward for that.
Councillor Littlewood. Councillor
Happy to put my name forward.
Councillor Wally Hoggins. Councillor Johnston. Councillor Rice.
I wanted to ask a question.
Oh, you may ask a question. We'll ask your question, and then we'll go on to the makeup of the task
My
and finish group.
previous experience on this particular group is that it's always in person. Does it have to be in person?
Yeah,
I'm not sure that's entirely true. I think we have had people coming in
Yeah.
on the screen in their time.
Yeah.
I do seem to remember.
Yeah, I think say I think it's a fair point to raise, Councillor Rice, and I think we can work whatever suits the membership of that committee to make it a hybrid meeting. I can't see any reason why it can't be a hybrid meeting, because some of the task and finish other groups have been hybrid meetings. So, Councillor Orcutt, please.
Thank you. Can you just let me know, please, either Chair or Mr Nash, is this made up politically balanced for this? You're just working that out now. I jumped the gun. I do beg your pardon.
We haven't worked out the calculation from the elections yet.
Right. Okay.
We'll work something out, don't worry.
Right, so all those who want to, rather than put an individual, could all those who want to be on the task and finish group please indicate no? Would like to? Yeah.
Yeah, cross-party. It's a cross-party nature for the actual group, but generally in association with the balance.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to confirm the names of the members that will be sitting on the task and finish group for the budget 2026-27 are Councillor Alcock, Councillor Littlewood, Councillor Passingham, Councillor Wally Hoggins, Councillor Johnston, Councillor Crump and Councillor Rice.
Councillor Johnston, please.
I just wanted to check the dates for these meetings as tabled are still going to be reliable if we are delayed in the government doesn't come across with the right numbers in the right time.
Yeah.
And I guess we just got to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I've checked that because the cabinet meeting and the OSC meeting in January have moved back a week, but it's been confirmed that the papers should be ready still in time for the task and finish group to consider them at their first meeting.
And I know that alongside Councillor Johnston has been in charge of the Public Open Space Flood group, and that's been a cross-party one, and that's been held as a hybrid meeting as well. And you've not had any real concerns about that, have you? Could you just put on record to say that you haven't had any real concerns, please?
I have no concerns about it being a hybrid meeting. We have, I'm certain, in previous budget task and finish groups, certainly last year, it was a hybrid meeting. I do seem to remember Councillor Passingham explaining the Greens' budget proposals on a screen in front of us.
No, that's brilliant. I think that's helpful, and I think, you know, we're trying to be, but like, sometimes people can't necessarily get to the meeting in person due to various different reasons, but can attend online because they, you know. So I think that's fair and reasonable, and I think we've got consensus on that one. Obviously, we've got the briefing document on page 73, so I think we're happy with that. Councillor. No problem. We're almost finished, though, but thank you for forbearance. And hopefully the event has got heating there and you're not too cold. Yeah. Right, thank you for that. So I think we've agreed the way forward on the task and finish group.
Just going to have a look at the terms of reference first, and then Min and Howard will come back to you. Just on the makeup of the committee.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, right. Next item is the work plan, which is on page 75 to 78. Haven't had any suggestions or alterations to that, and the January meeting is going to be a packed one again. I think one of the items we did consider earlier was to do with the off-street parking and the potential of the criteria, etc., that was going to be open. So perhaps it is a future item, but not in the near future. How that is going to be working, I would like to see that in the future. Councillor Johnston, please.
Refer to the ICB on page 4 to discuss Upper Lighthorn. I'd understood this was actually on the schedule for this meeting, the November meeting, and we're now being asked to come up with specific questions. I think that was kind of news to me, but what's the kind of timescale? If we come up with specific questions now, when would it be possible to incorporate this into the programme?
That would depend on when the ICB representatives are available and when they would agree to come. I think there might be some confusion because the ICB have been involved in the ongoing item on the Ellen Badger Hospital, which was originally scheduled for maybe this meeting or the one before, and we brought that forward in the year to the summer. The ICB then advised that we liaise more with this with SWIFT, the South Warwickshire University Foundation Trust, on that, and the ICB didn't end up coming to that session. So this is a separate matter that the ICB haven't agreed to come to a meeting on yet. It hasn't been scheduled yet, the Upper Lighthorn matter, and they've been quite clear that they want some specific questions and a bit of a lead on what input they could provide beyond what the district council reports that we've had recently, what they bring to the table.
Councillor Wally-Huggins, please.
Yeah, to come back to the ICB, we did agree that they were going to come back to talk about all issues, not just Lighthorn Heath, because for me and my residents, the debacle that is the Ellen Badger building is ever present, and to just surely they've got to come in and do a brief. It's about 12 months since they came in to talk about that. We had Swift in, didn't they? And a lot of their answers to us was that's an ICB matter. So to limit it to just talking about Lighthorn Heath, I would say to the ICB, nice try, Sunshine, but actually we need you here for the Ellen Badger as well.
Yeah, I think like I say, there's some very points there, Councillor Wally-Huggins. Our problem is we can't make them come to committee. We can ask them nicely, but unfortunately we can't make them. We can't drag them in, kicking and screaming into the meeting whilst, you know, some people would potentially like us to do that. Unfortunately we can't. So we might have to be slightly pragmatic in the way we get them in, to at least get them in to ask them some questions. Mr. Do you want to come in on?
Sorry, I'm just wondering if we just want to basically discuss the 7th of February meeting about Upper Lighthorn, and then at least that's one block we've done, and then maybe suggest something in the future with some set of questions about certain sites across the district, and maybe they may attend again, Chair. But you know, it's set down for February. If we give them questions, then they'll come in. And it says to discuss Upper Lighthorn, the questions are needed before ICB will agree to attend. I mean, you know, we could set them questions; they still may not attend. You know, we can't make them actually come in to a meeting.
Yes,
sorry, for those watching, I don't mean to be interrupting. All right then, so let's talk about other things to do with ICB, and I'm always a little bit kind of, it's that swift ICB, which one is it? All right then, let's give them another question that they could possibly come in and talk to us about, is accident and emergency for the residents of Stratford District, because we know that the hospital's opened only 3 days from 9 till 4 to have emergency. You know, those are the sorts of things that we could ask them to, and I don't think that's being unreasonable. We could also ask for, I think, and this is again not an unreasonable ask, is for an update on how things at the Ellen Badger, because I've heard anecdotally, and I'm sure that Councillor Passingham and Councillors Littlewood have also heard this, that there are other things happening at on the Ellen Badger site, and I don't think it's unreasonable for us to ask for an update from the ICB, and we could frame it in as wildly as that. Please, could we have an update on accident emergency facilities within the Stratford District, and an update, please, on how the facilities are being rolled out at the Ellen Badger.
Just thinking as a good compromise, if we could ask them, but I think the main issue here is basically forwarding them questions. I don't think they want to come to the meeting and then basically we're bombarding them. They won't be able to provide the details. So if we can set them questions, then maybe we can ask them to come in. It's just a bit of a suggestion or compromise, Chair.
Yeah, not a problem. Councillor Johnston, please.
I think we should produce some questions. I'd be happy to ask some of them at the County Adult Services and Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee if we can't get an answer. Well, they won't come to talk to us. We can ask there, and they do have to answer there.
And would you be willing to feed back those questions at Scrutiny Committee?
Yeah. If we produce a set of questions, we submit them, and they don't come back, we can ask the same questions elsewhere and seek an answer.
What specific items we'd like to discuss, and then we can submit questions for those specific items.
Yeah, I think from, again, a pragmatic way forward is that we would like to submit questions on specific items, not just one area, on specific items, and ask for them to come in and respond to those questions.
The councillors could advise, say, Howard, of the issues they'd like to discuss. Then Howard could go back to them in the interim to advise, we'd like to discuss these matters, and then we could follow that up with questions so they're not surprised when they get to the meeting.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable way forward. Councillor Passingham, please.
Yeah. Can we ask for written replies before the meeting? Because that would be useful, because when we've asked questions before, they've answered verbally and not very plainly about,
I think we could ask that in an ideal situation, in an ideal world, we'd like to see a written response to beforehand. But as Mr. Nash is saying, that if we potentially give too many conditions, they might just say, well, here's the written here's the written response to the answers, there's no point just coming in anyway. So whether they would give a undertaking to follow up after the meeting a written response to their answers, whether that would be the way forward.
Adam Carson promised a written response to a question that I know he's swift, but we still haven't got it.
Yeah, I'm still chasing the SWIFT representatives up on their responses to questions. Councillor Baskingham.
Maybe we could ask them that lovely question. If we go to a two-unitary option, how are you going to split the services between north and south? I mean, that's a beauty, isn't it? They'd love to come and talk about that. That'd be great.
Yeah. So I think if we can, we get questions on different areas, send them to them, ask them to come in, ask them to talk about the questions, and then after the meeting, provide a written follow-up, just so that a confirmation of so we've got a written record. I think that might be the most pragmatic way forward. Are you happy with that, Mr. Ash?
Just one point. Any written response by IB basically will have a strong caveat. So you'll get some answer from them, but I would be surprised if they didn't apply a caveat to their response.
Councillor Eastwood?
Well, I mean, I think we can sum this up by saying let's give them written questions that we want to ask, let them come and answer them. After all, their responses are recorded and it is available to the public. And if we wanted to make it a written report, it could be a transcript from the recording.
Yeah.
So if we have the specific sites first, then we ask them, and then we can follow it up with questions.
Yeah, specific site first, and then we'll follow up with the questions. I think that's the agreed way forward. I think we'll move on that one. And the last item on the agenda is urgent business. I've not... Councillor Rice, please. Is that...
Yeah, no, I thought we were still on the forward plan.
Oh.
No, it's just a silly little thing, perhaps. Unscheduled items. We did raise it on the 30th of October, and it's in the minutes that were approved at the start of the meeting, so it presumably could be dropped off now. Page 77. SIL allocation process.
Yeah, so I thought...
So if the committee's happy that that matter's been dealt with, then yeah, it could be removed from the work programme.
It's in the minutes for the 30th of October, so I assume we are happy with it. It's been and gone.
Yeah, we'll get back to you. I know. Yeah, so we'll get back to you on that one. I know we have discussed it, and you're right. I remember the SIL allocation process, how we, thanks to Councillor Keith's interventions last year or the year before that, how the allocations were more transparent and more robust. But yeah, I think we'll get you a response on this.
And it was also, so they were more related to the South Warwickshire local plan than just piecemeal across the district.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll definitely get a written response to you on that one, Councillor Price. Right. Item number 13, urgent business. I've been notified of none. So at 13:59, I was just checking the time. I now close this meeting. Thank you.